see the bump very clearly. Big lump of Flovis. Now the Alpine is out just following it as well. Now when they come back round, just keep an eye on how aggressive a bump that is on the Alpine's front suspension, because this is a really good way to have a look at just that stiffness. And these cars of this generation, which started last year, are so much stiffer than previous generations of car, right back to the 1970s. And that's because they're ground effect cars, so it's the floor of the car that's generating all of that downforce, rather than the wings and the bits above the bodywork that you can see. That means that the teams need to keep that floor as stable as possible. They need to keep it stiff as possible. And it's not quite back to the 1970s where you have that situation where the teams were almost taking the suspension out and just putting a bit of old scaffolding in and just running without suspension. The drivers didn't appreciate it, but these cars are so stiff. The one thing I haven't seen too much of, despite the stiffness of these cars, is porpoising. We haven't seen those cars bouncing, at least I certainly haven't seen those cars bouncing as aggressively as we did this time last year. And that, I think, is another result of the regulation changes for this year, with those raised floor edges, that slightly reshaped diffuser, and some of the other bits and pieces around the car, as well as the sensors underneath the driver's bum, which basically limit the teams. If the FIA see that a car is bouncing too aggressively, those oscillations, that up and down movement is too harsh, then it will flag a little alarm and the team will get told, well, you're going to have to change something there, lads, because that isn't an acceptable movement of the car. Now, we are waiting for this car. Two cars coming very slowly. The Williams first. You can see that bump on the front. Then you can even see it actually at the low speed on the Alfa Romeo, how aggressive the bump is. Now, I'm hoping we're going to see the Alpine come over that crest next. Here it comes. Watch the front wheels. Not as bad as it's been, actually, so I wonder if that was a little bit of a slower run. I've seen the Alpine almost lifting the wheels over that crest, so it's a really aggressive part of the track and a good point to monitor different cars. Something else you're going to see a lot of this year, considering this is a heavy braking zone on this circuit, is the teams playing around with brake ducts. You'll see those air scoops inside the front wheels on every single different car. And all they're doing is driving the air into the brake disc, the brake pads, and chucking it out the back. The rules changed in 2022, quite a bit about that. The teams reacted, but it's an area of the car that doesn't just benefit brake cooling. It has a big aerodynamic factor to play as well. So you will see all of the teams fiddling around with their brake cooling packages. And the team that really struggled with it last year was McLaren. They couldn't get it to work for all the opening races. They had the car pulling it apart for the opening races all the time. Well, I think that's something we're going to see an awful lot of here. The Williams is continuing around the track at the moment, so I think we'll see that pass one more time. Then I'll hand back over to the commentary box. But Bob, I really want you to focus in that bump. You can actually see the marks on the track, that darker section on the track where you see that white line across the circuit. That's the intermediate line for the timing. And when you see that line across the circuit, you'll see those drivers bump across, and then that's where you'll see this big bump I'm talking about. Now have a look here. There, bang! You can see the front end of the Williams just hopping up in the ground. And it's Flovis still running on that. The drivers are going to be feeling that. The engineers are going to be seeing all of that in the data. And they've got to get that right balance between responding to those bumps and getting the setup as fast as they can. With only 3 days of testing before we go into a Grand Prix weekend, it's going to be a difficult one to do. Guys, back to you in the commentary box.
Thank you very much, Sam Collins. As ever, invaluable content at the Turn 10, where we'll see an absolute sea of lockups across the next week and a bit as the Alpha continues. So 2 hours and 11 minutes to go of this opening session of pre-season testing in 2023. And we are coming to the close of our stint in the Combox. And we will welcome the excellent tones of Anthony Davidson and man standing directly behind me with a face on, David Croft. I always enjoy this bit where you have to wait for us to wind down the time. That is a lot. We will head down to Will, and then you'll be with Crofty and Ad for the remainder of the session. Down to you, Will Buxton.
Thanks, JXC. Yeah, welcome down to the pit lane. I thought I'd take you guys on a general kind of run through what's changed and what hasn't changed over the winter. just to bring you up to speed, really. And we start down here at Williams at the tail end of the pit lane. And, of course, the big news at Williams over the winter was that team chief Jost Capito, chief designer FX de Maison, left the team, and into their place stepped Mr. James Vowles, of course. So famous with the Mercedes F1 team, so much history there, so much championship success, so much knowledge and understanding that he's bringing to this team as they try to get their way back up the grid once again. New sponsors on board for Williams this year, Gulf. Big news there. Not quite the beautiful kind of light blue and orange Gulf livery that I think a lot of people were expecting, but that's because Gulf isn't their title sponsor, but the potential certainly there for the future that it could be maximised. But at the moment, Williams going really well actually in testing. When I came on air to speak to you guys, third fastest, about 10 laps behind what Verstappen and Sainz have done so far, but so far looking so good. A good start to testing for Williams. Down here at AlphaTauri, of course, the big change for them is that Nick de Vries comes in. There's Franz Tost having a little look at the screen. They've also pulled in the old Sauber sponsor Orlen, which was formerly associated with Robert Kubica, but they pick up that sponsor. And Nick de Vries, as we've been saying in commentary this morning, so much expectation on him. Such a great history, such a huge talent. Of course, we look at that Grand Prix debut that he made at Monza for Williams, scoring points on debut, having only stepped into the car the day before. But when you look all the way through his career, you look at Formula E, you look at Formula 2, all the way through, Nick de Vries, a sensational driver, a champion, very much deserving of his place in Formula 1, even if it has come a little bit later in his career. I think the guys were a bit harsh, saying it's a lose-lose situation for the boys down there at AlphaTauri this year, but no, a lot of expectation on Nick de Vries. And as we get here to Haas, a big announcement at the tail end of last year was that they, of course, had picked up a title sponsor in the form of MoneyGram, bringing them a huge and much-needed influx of money. And, of course, the return of Nico Hülkenberg to replace Mick Schumacher at the team alongside Kevin Magnussen. 3 years on the sidelines for Hulk, known as the super sub, jumping in for Aston Martin as and when he was called upon. And he's had a number of laps this morning. We've seen a couple of lockups from him in that Haas. Us getting the first real view of it, of course, when the car was launched, it was mostly just a render. So first proper look at the car on track this morning. 5th quickest he was when I came on air to you. We don't have the luxury of the big timing boards all around the pit lane and up in the grandstands as we do on race weekend. So I'm having to go on the basis of where the times were when I started this walk. And Hülkenberg was 5th quickest as we take a little step back, and already a little bit of gaffer tape just on the side pod there, holding the whole thing together. Now to Aston Martin, massive expectations from them. Lawrence Barretto, you heard him earlier say that the one thing that he felt from most of the team launches was they were all trying to downplay expectations. Not so at Aston Martin. A lot of confidence, a lot of positivity coming out of Aston Martin. Not a lot of positivity coming out of the garage this morning. Of course, Felipe Drugovich grinding to a halt as he left the garage. An electrical issue from him. It is resolved. He is out on track. But up to a couple of moments ago, he was only in single figures for the morning. So not the easiest of starts for Aston Martin. Still a smile on the boys' faces, which is nice to see. Of course, Lance Stroll, though, will not be here testing. He has injured himself. We wish him well, a speedy recovery, but Felipe Drugovich standing in for him, getting that all-important knowledge of the car, just in case he's called up to stand in for Lance next weekend here in Bahrain, the reigning Formula 2 champion. But as I said, we do wish Lance, and if you're watching Lance, we wish you well. Get well soon, man, and get back here. Right now to Alfa Romeo, and you see sitting on the pit wall there, I think, you can see the back of his head. Is it? I can't tell from this angle. It looks like Luni Bravi, Alessandro. It might not be, but you'll recognise Bayat. Bayat's been at this team forever, part of the DNA of what makes Sauber is Bayat. So he still the team manager, but Alessandro Luni Bravi comes in as the. Well, he's not really team principal. They've called him team representative. So essentially, Andreas Seidel, who comes in as CEO, I think will ultimately determine the direction of the team, the decisions to be made, and it'll be Alessandro's job to then go and tell everybody what Andreas has decided and turn up and do all the media. It's quite cushy, actually, for Andreas. He doesn't have to do the media. He can give all that to Alessandro, so he gets out of that, which is quite nice for him. But yeah, team lineup stays the same. Of course, Joe and Valtteri Bottas. Joe, who had such a great rookie season, and Valtteri, we know, such a phenomenal racer, can really get the power down. Second half of the season, not quite as good as the first half of Valtteri, but definitely Joe coming on leaps and bounds in that second half of the year. And we failed to mention, actually, walking past Aston Martin, that's where Fernando Alonso is now. To McLaren, the man in the car this morning, Oscar Piastri, so much controversy over his move to McLaren last year. That is the big change here, of course, as is the fact that Andreas Seidel left the team to go next door to Sauber / Alfa Romeo / going to become Audi, and into his place steps Andrea Della Stella, of course, a stalwart at the team, has been there for such a long time. Actually joined with Fernando Alonso, who partnered up with down at Ferrari. So when Fernando left Ferrari to go to McLaren, Andrea went with him and has become a really integral part of the team. Next up, Alpine, of course, fourth in the Constructors last year. We've spent a lot of time this morning looking at their car, one of the only cars to come in, we understand, pretty decently under the weight limit. But a beautiful looking car, new push rod rear suspension on that, a lot of work gone in, and already a really big development project put in place for this car. They were so effective last year with their developments, which they planned out well in advance in order to maximize the budget cap in Formula One. And were it not for the unreliability of the power unit in the back of that Alpine last season, could and arguably should have done so much better. Only a couple of teams remaining, so we'll take you to the end of the pit lane and run you through all of that, because down here at Mercedes, oddly, one of the teams where there have been no changes. We thought potentially they may seek to change that very different side pod layout, of course the vertical inlet rather than the horizontal inlet. But as the team has said, they do not believe that to be the performance differentiator that had been made out throughout last season. They've changed the rear suspension, hoping to shore the car up a little bit. There is one change at Mercedes. Just at the back there, Mick Schumacher, of course, no longer with Haas, becomes the reserve driver down here at Mercedes. So that's the big change down here at Mercedes. The car out on track and hoping to just really draw everything out of that car that they weren't quite able to last year. They still believe in the philosophy of the car. They still believe that ultimately their direction is the right direction. And with that in mind, it's fascinating that you have three very different concepts in these top three teams. Mercedes have stuck to their guns with last year's concept, hoping to just evolve it enough to draw everything out of it. The same here at Ferrari, who with Fred Vasseur now in charge, you see him sitting on the pit wall over there, hoping to draw everything out of Ferrari that they weren't quite able to get on top of last year. And they had the car. They had to detune, of course, the power unit after Baku. Never quite had the same pace again. Mistakes in the pit lane, mistakes on the pit wall. That's what Fred needs to get on top of in order to turn them from an also-ran into a genuine championship contender. But can anybody? And that's the question, can anybody hold a candle to these guys? Red Bull Racing, Max Verstappen going for a third Formula One World Championship in a row. Again, they've stuck very strictly to what was the all-conquering design of last year. Car looking great out on track at the moment. Verstappen, though, when I came on air, was P2. It's Carlos Sainz, who I think is still, is he? I don't want to go in here and get in trouble. Yes, Sainz still the fastest man out on track. So just a brief rundown of the changes that are going on here in the pit lane, but a small change up there in the commentary box as well, taking you through to lunch. The dulcet tones of my good friends, Mr. Anthony Davidson and Mr. David Croft.
Thank you very much, William Buxton. Marvellous little walk up and down the pit lane. Very good morning, good afternoon, good day, wherever you're watching around the world. Formula One is back, Anthony Davidson is back, and wow, it's been a long winter, hasn't it? Welcome everybody, how are we today?
Yeah, hello. Hi Crofty, great to have you here. Great to be in sunny Bahrain once again. And it's like Christmas all over again, isn't it? I've been waiting for this moment. It seems like the winter's gone on forever, but we're back, and I'm really excited for this.
Did you spend your Christmas at a Formula One racetrack, did you?
Just waiting. I'm waiting. I'm just looking at the calendar. When can I get back to action?
It was something like 110 days, wasn't it, from Abu Dhabi to the first race?
Something like that.
And I think the sport needed just to breathe a little bit. I think we all needed a little bit of a rest. But I've kind of had itchy feet and fingers waiting to get back to a track for some time now. And we see the reigning champion, Max Verstappen, out on the circuit as well with the second fastest time of the day so far. Carlos Sainz with the fastest for Ferrari, the 1:33.2. So I came into the paddock this morning about 8 minutes after the light had gone green. I stayed back in the office to watch you and Rachel with your wonderful pre-show, little teaser to the action. And as I walked up to the turnstiles, stepping out of his car, there was Adrian Newey. I thought, well, this is a great opportunity to have a chat to the man we all want to have a chat to. So I started well with, once upon a time, you'd have been keen, you'd have been here at 6 o'clock in the morning, you know, it was part-time now. To which he smiled and went, no, I actually landed at 6 o'clock this morning, which is why I'm now coming into the paddock. I said, how's your winter? It's been good. He said, got away, had a little bit of time away. Most of my work was done in the lead up to Christmas. I said, yes, talking of your work, Adrian, everyone wants to know, how good is this car? How good is your Red Bull car? And he smiled, because I think he was expecting that question, and said, well, Jonathan Wheatley upset everyone. He's just there on his own today.
Something he said. Or something that he's texted.
He's like, Christian, please come. I'm sat on my own.
Yeah.
Looks a bit suspicious.
I can see he's done 2 personal bests on that last lap, but the middle sector looks bad. Where is everyone? What happened?
Have we really started today? Jonathan Wheatley, the sporting director at Red Bull. So Adrian, expecting the question, was ready to bat away the answer. He said, no, we're pleased with what we've done, but we don't know yet. We don't know what the others are doing, and that's why we're all here at testing, to try and find out what we can do and what they can do. I said, well, where's your main challenge coming from? I think this was the crux of the conversation. Where does Adrian Newey see the challenge to Red Bull this year? And the answer, Ferrari, Mercedes, maybe Aston Martin.
Not Alpine.
Not Alpine.
Intriguing. Yeah. They're one of my teams of interest this year, Alpine.
Yes, because I watched your first few minutes.
The car looked good on track for what it's worth in these very early stages of the first day, and just the rumours around the paddock and things that you hear from different teams up and down the paddock regarding their team, all signs are good. You know, the numbers are exactly what they wanted to see from the wind tunnel, and the drivers reporting they've got a good feel from the car in the sim and all this kind of stuff. So they just seem to have that momentum behind them. And the car was pretty good last year, a pretty versatile car, but not a reliable car. So if they can fix their reliability, I think they should comfortably be best of the rest, and they're chipping away at trying to get to those top 3. So I'm surprised he's left them out. I did think he was going to say to you, the biggest enemy coming into this season has been the 25% less wind tunnel time.
Yes.
Not the other teams, because I'm sure they would have very much liked those extra 25%, that 25% wind tunnel time, because of the controversy and the overspend from last year's cost caps, which was a new thing that came into play in full force for last year and rolls into this year as well. But wow, did they have a good car last year, and I think they had enough of a buffer, enough of a margin to swallow that 25% pretty comfortably, and you know, it doesn't mean that they've had zero development at all on their car. And I mean, the fact that they're already faster than this time last year really goes to show the progress in Formula One, despite this floor change that they've all suffered, this 15 mil raise in the ride height of the car, or the floor of the car.
So many questions I want to ask you off the back of that first statement there. We will talk Alpine quite a bit after 1 o'clock local time, so in about 40 minutes. Jack Doohan, the reserve driver for Alpine, is going to join us in the commentary box to chat all things F1 and a programme that the pair of us have been watching over the course of the winter as well. More to explain to come on that one. We'll talk a bit about Aston Martin in a moment as well. But the changes to the floor. Now, Flovis, back again. That's not the livery for this year. That's manna from heaven for aerodynamicists in F1 teams throughout the continent to show where the airflow is going, and basically for Red Bull to correlate what they think is going to happen with what is happening on the track. The floor changes. On a normal season, such as this, when it's evolution, not revolution, you would expect all the teams to be going faster. But just a 15 millimeter raise in the ride height, how much of a difference does that make? And how much lap time needs to be clawed back by the teams by raising the floor that much?
Well, this is the big question, isn't it, Crofty? How much has it really hindered the teams? And I don't think it will hurt them equally either. I think cars will find it more tricky depending which team, which philosophy they have. I think teams that arguably ran a higher ride height, because it's not the ride height that's changed, it's the floor, it's the leading edge of the floor. It's gone up by 15 mil. So try in a quest to try to stop the porpoising, the crashing into the ground, the drivers complaining of a rough ride, hurting their backs, etc., etc. So it's in a bid to try to calm the ride of the car by raising the leading edge of the floor up higher. So it's just in front of the rear wheels. That's the area that's been modified, and underneath the floor as well itself, which we won't really get to see.
Is it very simplistic to say, if you were running a rake already, and the more rake you were running, the less disadvantaged you're going to be by that, because your leading edges were already quite high off the ground?
Some say that philosophy will be better suited. So a bit like when they modified the floor change in 2021.
Yeah.
It was a similar kind of thing that's happening now. And in a way, it's history repeating itself in the ground effects world that we're in now in Formula One. So in the late 70s, mid to late 70s, you had the ground effect cars, and it was great. They started to development to the point where they had skirts on the side of the floor to create this nice vacuumed area, sealed off area, and the cars were porpoising. And it was an uncomfortable ride, and the cars became dangerous when they lost that suction over curbs and bumps on the track. So they got rid of the skirts. It's history repeating itself.
Well, it tends to do that.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? So they've I mean, they didn't have skirts, but they've effectively done a similar thing by making the floor, the leading edge of the floor, higher by 15 millimeter. I mean, a ride height of a car, they work sometimes in 0.5 millimeter.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. You want to get that car as low to the ground as possible, but when you're talking of 15 mil, it's big. In anyone's world, it's pretty comprehensive.
If you remember back to Barcelona last year, we were marvelling, weren't we, at the cars going through turn 3. Look, you can barely see a gap between the surface and the floor of the car.
And I see a lot, just seeing this Aston Martin here going through turns 11 and 12. I'm seeing more air, clearly, already underneath the car. And then they might be running it higher in these early stages of testing. They don't want to chase the lap time and get the car dangerously close to the ground just yet, as they're focusing on other things. But I'm constantly seeing, there it is again, constantly seeing a lot more air, a lot more light coming in underneath the floor of the car than last year.
And I'll tell you what I'm seeing on that Aston Martin as well, a bit more of a rake than might have been shown at the launch. When this was the car that they showed at the launch. The rear wing might be slightly different as well, but there is definitely more of a rake.
I like the look of it. It does. They're another one of my teams that I think they should make a big progress from last year. It's just the whole nose section for me looked wrong last year. It was too high and a bit too stubby. It looks better. It looks a little bit more Red Bull-esque, I'd say.
Dan Fallows at Aston Martin, of course, the technical director, obviously learnt under Adrian Newey and at Red Bull, so it would be strange to think that he hasn't taken a few influences from the man himself, which is another thing Adrian and I were talking about as he walked into the paddock this morning. And then I saw Ted Kravitz patrolling the paddock. He's down in the pit lane at the moment. Ted, what news have you got?
Hello, Crofty. Hello, Anthony. Hello, everybody. Good afternoon, Bahrain time. Good morning still if you're watching us in Europe, or hello if you're wherever you're watching around the world. Now I have some facts and figures for you about what you've been talking about with the floor changes, Crofty. So I can fill in some of your questions. First of all, watching the cars out on track, they do look good, don't they? Raised up a little bit. I think that's is that effectively what you and Anthony are saying, that they look a little bit
We
better.
haven't
They're not
passed
being
comments on
slammed
the look.
into the. They're not being slammed into the ground quite so much. Maybe they don't look quite as stiff as they did before. There's a little bit of air to be seen under the thing. I think they do look pretty good, having been raised by that 15 millimeters. But it's cost, in terms of lap time, half a second. So half a second.
Wow.
And that's actually been clawed back largely due to the aerodynamic improvements and then, the floor improvements, the downforce. So we're not going to see much of a difference in lap times in terms of last year compared to this year, because we've lost that half a second because of the rule changes, the floor changes in itself. That's been gained back in most part by the designers. I was just talking to Jodie Eggington, the AlphaTauri technical director, and said that area of getting as much air as possible to that leading edge, that beginning of the floor section, the throat as some people call it, and then getting it into the tunnels underneath the floor and out the side to be worked by those floor sides. Now that they're higher, that's the critical area of development. But yeah, I mean, what do you think, Crofty and Anthony? I think they look a bit better being a bit higher up. What do you reckon?
I didn't mind them being that close to the ground, to be fair. I'm sure the drivers minded it when they were porpoising. I think the cars look splendid.
They look a bit more. Yeah, they look a bit more compliant to me, which is
easier to drive.
No, just the way that the body of the car rolls around a bit more. They were so incredibly stiff,
Right.
so stiffly sprung before because the car was much lower to the ground. So I've heard Jolien talking about this earlier on, actually, saying that you wanted the aero platform to be stable as possible. You don't want it bouncing around or pitching or rolling, because that's going to, A, make an uncomfortable ride by crashing the leading edge of the floor into the ground like we saw so much of last year, and B, just an incredibly uncomfortable ride for the driver themselves. And with that, when every time it crashed into the ground, you'd lose performance. You'd have sort of peaks and troughs of a great amount of downforce when it was in the sweet spot, and as it fluctuated its ride, you'd go into a world of pain of no downforce or very little as it went higher or too low, and you were never able to run the car in its sweet spot. So you had to make it incredibly stiff to try and hope that you could run the car in that sweet spot as much as you could. But then you come to slow speed corners, and they became your nemesis, because in slow speed corners you need the drivability of the car, you need the suppleness and the compliance of the suspension. And they didn't have that last year because they were so driven to make their car lower and stiffer as a result. So yeah, drivers like the cool-looking Valtteri Bottas will have an easier time of it.
Looks like he's heading into Aussie rules. He does, doesn't he? He could play for the West Coast Eagles, quite frankly. With his a hairstyle that I thought was gonna disappear after the winter, but he's kept it going, and why not? Why not, indeed?
Yeah, he's looking on an interest. I mean, you always do that as the driver that's not in the car at that point. They only have the one car here, of course, so they have to top and tail driver time. Each driver getting roughly a day and a half, depending on how they spread the workload. It's not much, is it? Before you go racing, just 1.5 days before the race week.
George Russell was saying that they should have 2 cars per team at testing.
Of course you would.
Because it's only 1.5 days.
Yeah.
He said you wouldn't let Roger Federer go and play a tennis Grand Slam with only 12 hours of testing. Although, to be fair, Roger Federer wouldn't be on a simulator to the extent that George Russell has probably been on a simulator during the course of the winter.
But it's not the same. It's really not the same thing. It's one of the only sports in the world where you can't practice the thing you do.
Unless you do a practice session or testing, yeah.
Yeah. So as the athlete...
That's
just the start of the exit of the pit lane.
I'm glad, though, we are riding on board with George Russell now. You'll see those cables coming out of the steering wheel, which I don't believe is packaging gone wrong at Mercedes,
No.
and bad cable tying expertise there. Or
You
lack
can
of
see
it.
there are 3 nodes as well where those cables are attached to. 2 on the top of the steering wheel either side, and then 1 directly in the middle that's just covered a thing. Yeah, just see it as it comes into the light as he turns into turn 4 at the top of the hill.
Do we think that's for measuring vibrations on steering wheel and potential porpoising that may or may not be going on? Is that the sort of thing you're measuring on there?
Yeah, I mean, it could be anything on these cars. I mean, I saw earlier on a bit of vibration actually on the rearward facing camera looking back at Max Verstappen's hands on the wheel. He was going slowly, but there was a awful lot of vibration that I'm sure I didn't see last year on the Red Bull, on the run down towards turn 11. But who knows? They could be. There are so many sensors, like sensory overload on these cars in testing, which obviously they don't run for the race. I think it can be up to anything like 10 to 15 kilograms of extra weight on the car from all the sensors on there.
And that may or may not have been one of the reasons that we saw Felipe Drugovich stop out on the track earlier today. First red flag after about 6 minutes of testing. So many sensors on the car, it might, no official confirmation for the team.
Yeah, there's a shot. Look, Crofty looking back at it. So that middle, the sensor is in the middle, and then actually maybe the two sensors are either side, and that's just the channeling of the cables. Yeah, that's what it looks to me.
Yeah, it might just have overloaded the ECU a little bit, because there were that many sensors running on the car, because we're in testing, and teams can run as many as they like. We're not bound by the rules and regulations just at this point, although it would be stupid to be running an illegal car, because it's not going to be racing here this time next week, or even on the Sunday afternoon. So there's those cables that we were talking about.
And for the people at home thinking, oh, it might be DAS reintroduced, it's not. It's still banned. You're not allowed that. It was a clever innovation from Mercedes when they ran it, but
those
you're
were the days.
Not allowed that anymore in Formula 1. So it's not about that.
Now, let me just go back to... I see Christian Horner did get the text message from Jonathan Wheatley. He has arrived.
See, I never left you.
Yeah.
I was always here.
Don't worry. I just had to go and sort something out in the garage. You don't have to be on your own anymore. It now makes me think, was Jonathan Wheatley actually texting his boss there to say, come and join us, I'm lonely? Either way, what is wrong with just 3 days of testing? And I'm talking here from the standpoint of a observer and fan who wants to see competition out on track and not teams get absolutely 100% handle on their cars at this stage of the year.
Well, in terms of reliability, you don't really want to see cars breaking down left, right, centre to the point where you only have a couple of cars finish the race. That's not what we want to see.
They can sort out reliability over 3 days, piece of cake. Surely.
They're complex beasts, Crofty, so look, you need a bit of time to sort reliability. But yeah, I totally agree. You don't need 364 days of testing to do a single day race, and they would. Every team would take you up on that offer. Yes. They really would. And they'd probably still get to the race and say, "Oh, we just had the car outside of the working window by the time the temperatures caught us out." Blah blah blah. But yeah, I think it puts pressure on the teams to run fewer days before testing, before the race week, and it has drastically come down over the years I've been in Formula 1.
I am all for this 3 days of testing, and give us as much action on the track during the testing period, which is now being televised live, which wasn't televised live back in the day when we went testing again and again and again, and I know it kept you in gainful employment for many years, and that was a good thing, but I'm not quite sure it did wonders for the racing all the time.
The one thing it doesn't help the young drivers trying to come through.
That is true.
Because for the likes of myself, Sebastian Vettel, Robert Kubica, just to name a few, it really fast-tracked our progress, not just in terms of being noticed, but in terms of our experience. It fast-tracked our efforts to get us into Formula 1, and that's missing these days. It's so hard for a rookie to come in and show themselves for to show their true ability, because you throw a rookie and try and beat this guy. We're looking on the screen now for Logan Sargent trying to beat Alex Albon this year. That's such a tall order. He's got 1.5 days to try and out-qualify this guy.
Yeah, which is not going to happen overnight.
Yeah, and back in my day, you had a lot of time to get a feel for the car and hone your skills as an athlete. And in many ways, I do agree with George. It's really unfair on the athlete not being able to practice what you do.
So they should allow them to go and run older cars then. As is the case with a lot of rookies coming through, they'll run a car that's more than 2 years old, and they'll go and have an extensive testing process to familiarise themselves with a Formula 1 car, albeit not the current car. which Felipe Drugovich is driving today, and didn't think he would be, but as a reserve driver in Aston Martin, with Lance Stroll injured at the moment and unable to take part in the test, he's got a chance to step up and see what it's all about. Oh, those were the days, eh, Ted Kravitz? Anthony Davidson, Sebastian Vettel, Alex Wirtz, Robert Kubica, young rookies on a Friday. Oh, it seems like only yesterday.
Oh, isn't it, Crofty, eh? Jumpers for goalposts. Yes, I remember it very well. In fact, does Anthony know, is Anthony aware of the record that he held jointly with another driver that's just been broken this year?
No, what was that?
Most amount of engines destroyed him.
No, most diminutive driver pairing in Formula One.
Oh yes, I did hear about that. Yeah.
You and Taku.
So yeah, you held it with Takuma Sato from Super Aguri.
Hey Ted, records are there to be broken.
That's true. It's now been beaten by, of course, Yuki Tsunoda and Nick de Vries by 4 centimetres. So congratulations to them. It's a designer's dream, absolute designer's dream. Lucky.
The bar has
lucky
been lowered, Ted. Literally.
Lucky AlphaTauri to have such lightweight jockey drivers. Now, update at Ferrari. Should we talk about the dimple in the nose? Now, I think you might have seen
whose
this, if you didn't
face?
see it on the dimple in the Ferrari nose. Now, if you didn't see this later, there is a dimple around between the Santander logo and the Ferrari logo. We saw it earlier in the coverage. And so if we're looking for a name for this Ferrari, apart from SF23 and in the manner that Sebastian Vettel liked to name his cars, how about we call this one Dimple? Because
oh yeah, we're looking at it on the screen now, Ted.
Yes.
There you go. At speed, there was a little dimple on the nose. Isn't it sweet? Like the face of an innocent child or something like that. Anyway.
Is it a dimple that appears and then disappears?
Yes, because
it did, yeah.
It's a very thin piece of carbon fiber ply that is just giving way a little bit under aero pressure, under air load basically. And if you imagine it, the crash structure of the Ferrari nose cone actually goes either side of that dimple, and to save weight and everything else, it's hollow in the middle. And that's why there's a little bit of give in the carbon fiber, and it's getting that dimple. I understand Ferrari.
Is that your hand we can see there, Ted?
What, on the Ferrari
Ted, is that,
logo?
is,
yes.
Yeah, we're looking at
down here.
Yeah,
Hello.
give it a press.
Yes.
Press it.
No, I can't do that. Are you kidding?
Oh, no, you
trying to
could.
get me into trouble.
Go on, just
trying to get me into trouble in the. But maybe you can see maybe the hard bits of the nose will actually be going from a tip down here, whereas to pass the crash test, which is very, very hard to pass on the nose, either side, that will give it its rigidity, and then it's sort of hollow in the middle. I understand Ferrari say it shouldn't be giving way in the way it is, and they will put some kind of fix in it, potentially to avoid further questions about the whole thing, whether it should be having that dimple. But I think it's rather sweet, having a little dimple like that. As you can see, the car itself is being worked on. They're just making the changes according to their program. They had just made a change to the front suspension. They're now changing something on the floor, as you can see. I think it's the rear suspension, and being a pull rod, they have to get to the underside of it. But pull rod rear suspension, of course, when the rockers and everything are underneath the car, makes it a bit harder work for the mechanics. But Carlos Sainz, I can tell you, behind those screens, is still in the car. So he's just chilling out, old Chili, and waiting for the changes to be completed. Why are you laughing?
Let me just... I like chilling out. It was very good. Let me just clarify this, because, you know, it takes me a while, as you know. It's there to save weight rather than any form of aerodynamic benefit necessarily. Is that what you're implying, Ted? The dimple?
No, I mean, the suggestion is that in previous times that would be a very solid bit of carbon fiber that would cover over. The guess, and it is just a guess, in that to save weight, that is now a hollow section that they've managed to pass the crash tests and pass all the rules and managed to save a bit. Obviously, the easiest way to save weight is to cut a hole out of something, because holes don't weigh anything, and even carbon fiber does weigh something. So that's just a supposition on a few of us down here's point, that if it was solid before, they've just thinned it out to save weight wherever possible, and rather than it being a completely new front wing design that gives. But I understand Ferrari is saying in the paddock that it shouldn't give that much, and they're going to do something about it.
Ted, before you leave us, the struts on the elements, the different elements of the wing. So last year, Mercedes tried something with these angled struts, the stays.
Yeah. You're talking about these little deflectors here, Anthony.
Yeah. So, I mean, yeah.
Yep,
so
the slot gap separators, yeah.
Slot gap separator, that's the technical word I was looking for. So tell us about that. Why can they run it now? Has something changed in the regulations from last year?
I believe so. I think there's a change of a word, that these slot gap separators, which of course are mostly there, I think last year the rules said they had to be primarily there to actually separate the top two flaps. Of course, the secondary effect is obviously it's an outwashing aerodynamic effect, and I think we covered this, didn't we, Crofty, at the US Grand Prix when Mercedes first turned up with these optimistic-looking slot gap separators, which just happened to be deflecting air to outwash the air to the outside of the front wheels, and but their primary purpose, of course, is to separate the top two flaps of the car. I believe there has been a little amendment of the rules to mean that this now is more easily justified as a slot gap separator with a secondary purpose of actually having an aerodynamic outwash effect.
Getcha.
Interesting. Thank you, Ted.
But I think we'll see it appear on. I think we'll see it on. I think now that everybody knows, and I think it's accepted that Ferrari can run it, we'll see it reappear on the Mercedes, whose idea it was in the first place, and probably some other people as well. But we're joined. Well, I'm not joined, but Fred Vasseur, the new Ferrari boss, has now joined Carlos Sainz in the garage and is just having a look at the changes underneath the car and just keeping abreast of what's going on, patrolling the garage. In the way that I think we'll see Fred Vasseur do quite a lot.
A breath of fresh air is how it was described to me. Freddie Vasseur coming into the Ferrari team, and I hope that's the case. I really do. Sad to see Mattia Binotto go. We enjoyed his comments on the pit wall. We enjoyed his honesty when he was speaking to us. And I think it's a shame that a solution couldn't be found to keep him at the team, whilst bringing someone in to maybe take charge of the less technical side of a team principal's job that Mattia probably found more difficult given his background with Ferrari. But if Fred Vasseur has come in, and you know him well, Anthony, having known him for many, many years, and has started to make a few changes behind the scenes, create a new culture at Ferrari, and make it very much the Fred Vasseur reign as team principal, that should translate into performance and decent times for Ferrari to come.
He's certainly a character. He's a familiar face in the paddock, first and foremost. I think Jolyon described him earlier on as a true racer. I stand by that. He really is. He's a bit of a driver whisperer as well. The drivers really trust him, listen to his advice, and he's come up through the ropes of racing. So he is a true racer and totally gets it. Yeah. He's also a proper team principal, not necessarily technical, and I think he replaces somebody that very much was technical, came at it from a very different angle, a different approach. So Mattia, I mean, maybe the reliability issues that they got on top of last year with their fragile engine, maybe that was actually Mattia's doing, because he was the technical engine guy. That's what he used to do. That's what he's trained to do. So ironically, maybe with his input, he's teed it up nicely for that reliability to run with it this year. And Fred now finds himself in a position to run the team, and let's see if the team can trust him and follow him as much as drivers do. And it's a really interesting dynamic. I expect great things from him.
There needs to be trust from both sides, from those underneath Fred and those above him as well. From the board and from John Elkann, the chairman. They need to, if they're going to bring somebody in to replace somebody who they don't think is doing a good enough job, and I know Mattia Binotto resigned, but the speculation was he was allowed to dictate the terms of his departure, as it were, rather than be pushed. If they want that replacement, then they need to trust him to do the job. Already, I'm told Iñaki Rueda, the head of strategy and sporting, is going to be more factory-based for this season. This is something that Fred Vasseur has decided needs to happen. Not to demote him in any way, shape or form. Oh, someone just fallen off.
No, it's a bird. I think there were 2 birds. One got away, or maybe it's the same one. It just fluttered frantically. I don't know. I'm sure we'll see it again in the slow-mo.
I hope they're okay. I really do. Iñaki Rueda will concentrate more on the sporting side rather than strategy. And a man who came under the spotlight and criticism from all sides last year after what seemingly turned into races that got away from Ferrari through strategy going wrong. Well, Raveen Jain is going to be taking the race strategist role on that pit wall to relieve some of the pressure that I think have been building up on Iñaki. He's not been fired, he's not been demoted, he's just been taken out of the firing line for the time being.
Yeah.
And someone else brought in to take the heat off a little bit so that, well, the calls and the job can be done without fear of failure.
And it will take time, naturally. You know, these are small steps we're talking about, but it will take time before, like I've seen so many team bosses, team principals come and go at Brackley, for example. And it takes time before they get their roots down and start to make productive changes for the better. So, you know, let's give Fred Vasseur time, as we will give James Vowles time. This team we're looking at here used to be the Mercedes chief strategist, of course. Now James Vowles finds himself at Williams as team principal. New role for him. He's never done this kind of work before, and you know, it's a big dynamic change. It's a sea change for the team. But you don't expect changes overnight in this game.
You and I, and you more so, Ant, have been friends with Vowlesy for many, many years. I personally could not be more pleased for him that he's got that job at Williams. I think he thoroughly deserves it, and I think he will turn into an inspired choice for that team principal role. And it's actually quite refreshing to see someone who's not got that technical background, that engineering background, as it were, make the transition to team principal. He'll come at that job, maybe like Fred Vasseur, in a very different way to Andrea Stella, for instance, at McLaren, who's followed the engineering path onto team principal.
James does have engineering degrees. You know, he is, in the truest sense, he is an engineer. He's just found himself into the strategy side of things. So I think it's because he's of that
strategic nature.
Yeah, strategic nature that he has, that it lends itself quite well to being a team principal, because it is about strategy in a way, but placing people in the perfect role to bring it all together to make it sing along. I think that's, you know, that he's got a good eye for that, and he's an incredibly hard worker. Yeah. I think that's the thing he's probably got to be a bit careful of, is not demanding too much too soon from people around him, to expect them to work as hard as his workload is. A little bit of an Elon Musk kind of thing, you know, where he's just an absolute workaholic. So, and he won't mind me saying that, he is. Yeah. And I think that, you know, he's going to have a lot of high standards coming from Mercedes. Yeah. And just his approach to the work, he's going to demand that from others around him.
But he's not been designing front wings, rear wings, power units, you name it. And that's kind of what I'm getting at. You know, he's not been there in the design office, as it were, and he's not been there, you know, looking at aerodynamics in recent years. But I do think he's a very good fit. Now, how he handles the politics of the team principal world, I'm not quite sure.
How does he handle the strategy? Imagine when he can clearly see something's not going quite as he would have done it. Yeah.
If you're Richard Lockwood, the head of strategy at Williams, you're thinking, oh, great, thanks ever so much. Or you're thinking, actually, no, great, thanks ever so much. I've got someone now who can relate to what I'm doing.
Yeah, maybe.
One thing I would say about Vowlesy, and I'm sure you'll forgive me for saying this live in front of a worldwide audience, I can't get used to him being in a blazer. That just doesn't work for me at all.
Really?
On his wedding day, I do believe he wore a suit. I don't think I've ever seen him in a suit since. And wearing a blazer, it's just got to stop Vowlesy. It really has.
Well, let's see.
The team
if it works, then don't stop a good thing.
The team kit would be better, although the dark blue and the light blue, I'm not quite sure. Colour sides we're on board with. So that's kind of the big news at Ferrari. And I'm sure it will be blown up that Fred Vasseur has got rid of the strategist that cost Ferrari last year. That isn't the case, I'm told by the team. And it's very much a, look, just, take the heat off a little bit. We want people to be empowered to do the job and to do the job well. And you know how hard it is to excel at anything when you've got that fear of failure in the back of your mind.
And it's such a pressurised team as well, that environment down at Ferrari. I don't think I've spoken to many people that have gone from different teams and ended up at Ferrari, and they say whatever you have imagined it to be, that pressure cooker environment, it's nowhere near. It's nowhere near bad enough in your imagination. Yeah, it's something you cannot imagine. So yeah, here he is. He's the man himself, overlooking things now.
Laurent Mekies.
I think they'll make a great team. Yeah, Laurent Mekies and Fred Vasseur. I reckon
you're a big fan of Laurent Mekies. You've kind of
technically brilliant.
Yeah, watched him from close quarters for many years.
Yeah, technically brilliant, real calm head, and very data-driven. I sounds crazy. Data-driven engineer. And again, that calming voice that people trust within the team. So I think that combination, I'm looking forward to seeing that flourish between the two of them. I hope it does. Like I say, high hopes for Fred, but that relationship between those two, I think, can go very far.
I can also say I think it's a very good team principal name, Fred. You know where you stand with a Fred, don't you? You're going to get
no messing.
Truth, no messing, honesty from Fred.
One thing I did see with the Ferrari, and we were talking politics and team principles and whatnot, but I did see an awful lot of porpoising from the car just then on the run down towards the final corner. Was it porpoising
or was it bouncing over bumps?
A bit of everything, yeah.
Because it's quite a bumpy track here,
It is, but I haven't seen anyone's head bouncing around quite as much as... No, it was worse than this. It was definitely worse than this. And maybe they're just starting to sneak the car down and test the limits a bit. So you see the bouncing through turn 12?
Okay, so
sparking away there at the rear. They're starting to test things by dropping the car lower and lower. Porpoising and bouncing hasn't gone away this year.
I was just about to say,
it's always going to be a problem with a ground effects car. It will always be a problem.
Which makes you wonder why it wasn't kind of picked up by the teams early on in the design process for last year's cars. Or was it?
It
was.
And
they couldn't do anything about it?
It was. I just don't think they realised the magnitude, the extent of the problems that they'd be facing.
Well, certainly that was the case for Mercedes, wasn't it? That until they came here, they didn't realise quite how bad it was going to be.
Well, I think they were probably amongst the most aggressive in terms of where they ran the car, where they had to run the car to make it work aerodynamically. And they were stuck in this rut, this horrible place to be in, without any versatility to the car at all. So hopefully the car will be a bit more... I remember reading somewhere in the off-season about the Alfa Romeo car being I forget the exact words they use, a versatile car or more of a track-friendly car from track to track. And that's basically what all the teams are trying to achieve. You can't just build a car to be on a billiard table smooth surface like Interlagos and that lovely new surface that they have there, or Paul Ricard, something like that. You can't build a car just to work on those kind of tracks. It has to work everywhere.
It's got to cover absolutely. You're right. It's like everything in Formula One. It is a compromise, and you've got to find the right compromise, and hopefully it gets you to a championship at the end of the season. Oscar Piastri, as you can see, car number 81, out on track, 9th fastest today, 1:35.5. Although his first sector on this particular lap is the quickest that he's put in throughout any of the 30 laps he's completed so far. And whilst we ride on board and watch from the rear wing of the McLaren, we can actually head down to Ted in the pit lane. Ted.
Thank you very much, Crofty. Yes, talking about Oscar Piastri, I don't know if you've noticed in the paddock, it's quite weird to see his manager, Mark Webber, hanging around at McLaren. Of course, one of the teams that Mark Webber never drove for. Jaguar, Williams, Red Bull, of course, never drove for McLaren. So, yeah, funny to see Mark Webber hanging around at McLaren. Now, let's talk about down here at Alpine before I've got one last bit of Ferrari news to give you, and that's that Pierre Gasly's morning is curtailed, or afternoon as it is now Bahrain's time, is curtailed slightly while the team work on an issue at the back of the car. I don't believe it's anything serious, but there's quite a discussion with the chief mechanic, Rob Cherry, at the back, talking to some engineers and designers about what they're doing. They've been looking at the rear of the car where the work is going on and just sort of talking about it. I don't think it's a big thing. I can't see whether it's the sort of suspension or anything at the top of the gearbox, or I think it is actually. From looking at it, we can just see the side of the top of the suspension just being worked on. Not the chap screwing back on the engine cover around the Castrol logo. It's further back towards the top of the gearbox where a lot of that suspension is. There you go. You can see chief mechanic just looking down to see whether that work is being done. So I don't think it's anything serious. Just part of the changes that they're making. But it does mean that Gasly's been out of the car for a good 10-15 minutes that I've seen him. And it might even be longer if you haven't seen the Alpine out on track for a while. But they want to get that done quite quickly and get him out before the lunch break, which is approaching in what we got, Crofty, about an hour and 5 minutes, something like that. And the
hour and 20 minutes, Ted. Hour and 20 minutes.
Yes,
I forgot until quarter past the hour.
I forgot the 15. Of course, I forgot the 15 minutes. But I do have some confirmation from Ferrari about Dimple. And when we were seeing Carlos Sainz on track, as behind me Max Verstappen goes out with even more Floviz paint on the back of his rear wing, new rear wing, of course, as well as the new channels on that, side channels on that Red Bull. So confirmation from Ferrari about that dimple. It is not, as we said, it is not meant to be there. There was some issue with a supporting part of that nose, which had either sort of come away or hadn't been fitted, and that is the bit that will be fixed and remedied for the rest of the day and the rest of the test. So just confirmation of what we were saying earlier. It is a hole underneath it, but it wasn't meant to be giving way like that. There was meant to be the covering, which is now in place.
Thank you very much indeed, Ted Kravitz. Just trawling through a few tweets here.
Sorry, Crofty, just
before we do that, you want to talk about Carlos Sainz?
Yeah, just as Ted was talking here, he wouldn't have seen it, but here's the shot I saw where he just lost the rear in turn 6 and had to take to the inside of turn 7. So a bit snappy there as he goes through the crosswind. Quite a windy day actually here in Bahrain today.
Yes, is it a headwind?
It's a tailwind
down the main straight. So it's blowing you into that first turn.
Yeah, so you're turning through it as you go through turn 6.
Did Sainz pit? You know the lap we saw him pointing out the porpoising on the car. I think he came into the pits and then came back out again.
I'm not sure about it. I missed that one.
George Russell, by the way, had a little locker going into turn 10. Average pace, says Crofty. How is drivers not being at their best good for racing? We don't want racing to be good because a driver who hasn't had enough practice time makes a mistake. Surely giving the drivers time to be the best of their ability is only a good thing. Now, my theory is, and I could be wrong on this one, that the drivers have access to simulators and state-of-the-art simulators that's meant to replicate the real thing, and they can train very hard on those simulators. What I think the sport is trying to get away from is engineers engineering a certainty in the car by practicing and lapping over and over and over again. That's where I think a lack of testing, as in the old days where we tested in between every race, isn't a bad thing. I
think in terms of what the driver gets from the simulator, as good as they are, you only really get a feel for the functionality of the steering wheel. They're complex things to learn. There's no better way to learn the steering wheel than in the sim, in a relaxed environment. And for a young driver coming through, it's quite daunting, actually, that prospect of opening the driver manual like it was in the old days of learning the steering wheel ins and outs through text form and pictures.
Yeah.
To actually see it in action and change switches and get a little bit of a feel for what that might do to the car and do it as you're driving the sim, that's brilliant. It becomes second nature quite quickly. But what you'll never replace is G-force in a sim. No, and you never replace that exact feel from the tyre to the track. And therefore, it's very hard to hone your skill. And it's better for a team in the sim than it is for a driver. The teams learn much more from sim running days than a driver will ever do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the simulators aren't for drivers. They're for the teams to learn about the car.
Well, that's not good. You spend most of your life in a simulator.
Yeah, I'm just doing my job for a teams to learn.
Just a puppet on an engineer's strings.
Yeah, I mean, I give my expertise, my feelings on setup changes and differences in design philosophies and things like that, but I don't get much from it in terms of, say, like, evolving my craft.
Right, okay.
You know what I mean? So it's very much there for the team. It's a common misconception. It's not for the athlete, the sim.
You have evolved over the years, though, to be fair.
That's from working with you, Crofty.
Yeah, well,
I've learned from you.
and I've learned a huge amount from you.
But a golf simulator. So I had a bit of I'm not a golfer, but I've had a go on a golf simulator. The difference with a golf simulator is that you physically hold the club and you do the same action. You are doing the same action. And you can definitely learn from playing a golf simulator to hone your craft. You can't you can only take it so far in a car simulator. There's a big difference. So yes, the athlete needs time behind the wheel on a real racetrack in that very car. Maybe we can just limit the amount of tweaks and data that they can pull from the car, which is probably going to be your next point.
Take away the laptop. That's what I would do. I'd steal them overnight and never give them back again. Look, Max is just giving himself a bit of space here to go for another lap. And this is quite a timely moment because Xeon Blacktooth, which could already be my tweet name of the season, Xeon Blacktooth, is that your real name? Says, Crofty, welcome back, enjoying the coverage. Got a question, how bumpy are the straights? Some are finding the bumps, but I noticed Max bouncing more than others, like Ant had noticed, and there he is, bouncing away down the straights.
Well, it was Carlos that I'd noticed before.
Yeah.
He was the one really, with the head moving around, car porpoising around. The Red Bull looks quite stiff. In terms of when it hits the bumps, but it's definitely not bouncing or porpoising, it's just a stiff ride. So yeah, they've got their car in a bit of a different place at the moment to the likes of Ferrari.
But it is a fairly bumpy track here.
It is. Never been resurfaced.
Doesn't need to be.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be. And it's the lowest grip track we go to of the season as well.
It's all that Shropshire stone. And I have to say that
isn't
very
it?
deliberately
Yeah.
when I say that. From Shrewsbury. Shropshire stone.
Yes.
See?
It's
Sound like
hard,
Sean Connery every time I do it. Shropshire Stone, Miss Moneypenny. That was probably the worst Sean Connery impression you'll ever hear, I'm afraid. Through turn 10 goes Max Verstappen, and you'll see more bumps and vibrations as he enters turn 11. Drops down the gears slightly. You're going trackside in a moment. What corner are you actually going to go and stand at? Do you know yet?
Well,
Have you made your mind up?
I haven't.
Which one do you want to stand
Let me watch the end of this lap of Max. I might make my mind up.
I thought you might have prepared it before
last year I looked at turn 1 exit through turn 2 just to see the mechanical grip of the car and then work my way around the track from there. So
because it was nearest the paddock.
maybe I should just... No, not necessarily. Don't judge me by your standards.
Certainly, it's
He's made himself laugh, ladies and gentlemen. So that's the
one of my
main thing.
favourite corners.
It is closest to the paddock, so yeah, I might take you up on this.
Way
Good
better
idea.
than turn 4.
Just there, where he's come out of his.
Although it's a crucial part of the track because you can lose so much time with a bad exit there, or even find yourself heading into a bit of a spin, as is often the case. Rachel Brooks has joined us in the commentary box. Because when Ant goes trackside, Rachel is going to be one of the 2 people that we brought in to replace you. You're being replaced by 2 persons. Hello, Rachel.
Is that how much it takes?
Yes, I'm half an ant. And actually, Ant, you don't have to walk anywhere because there's a buggy waiting to take you. You have a taxi to ferry you around. Such is your
Do they really?
standing.
Wow.
Does the buggy driver realise what a bad passenger he is and how he's just going to take over the driving? You won't let anyone.
Don't tell them.
You won't let anyone drive you about.
I've let Ted Kravitz drive me about this week.
Well, it's only because
He's a very good driver.
Ted shouts at you. Otherwise. Hello. See, Rachel Brooks is with us.
Ted's a very good driver. I was impressed. Oh, well, apart from one moment last night, but we won't mention that.
Oh, do.
He avoided that cardboard box that obliterated itself in the middle lane this morning. That was very impressive.
Very good
Parking,
reactions.
isn't he a great
Oh,
parker?
the
When it comes to
was
parking,
phenomenal.
there's no one better.
Yes.
You haven't seen his parking yet.
Well, I did this morning as he reversed into a space and then apologised that it was a bit tight and that
Got
people
in there,
would
though,
struggle
didn't
to
he?
get out. I mean,
It was the only space available.
It was an 8-point turn to try and get into there, but it was absolutely perfect. Fair play.
Yeah.
Like he'd got a ruler out and measured it both sides.
Lando Norris would have been proud of him, to be fair. Actually, that would be a good TED notebook challenge, wouldn't it, this year?
Who can park the best?
To take a Formula 1 driver and TED and see who can park the best.
Reverse parking, of course, because, you know, again, going back to the training, well, you know, these guys are honed at parking into a pit box going forwards, but how good are they at reversing into a pit box?
Well, it's very rare they have to reverse full stop, although in testing, of course, they will be trying out the reverse gear just to make sure it works.
I'm terrible at reversing. I'll put my hand up. I'm much better at going forwards.
In a Formula 1 car or on the road normally?
No, on the road normally, yeah, anything.
You see, now there is a theory. So where I live, there are parking spaces. All the women reverse into their spaces, and all the men drive in forwards.
That's because we're
and
lazy.
Is it lazy though?
Yes.
Or is there a part of the women's brain that can manage the reverse?
No, it's just because we don't think about the next day. We're just like, yeah, get this
Whereas
done.
we do. We want to reverse in so we can just, because we're usually running late. Well, I'm usually running late. That's why I do it.
I am the worst parker on the planet, and my kids now, we'll park up, and then before I can even open my mouth, yeah, that'll do, Dad, straight enough.
Otherwise they'll be there for an hour and they know.
Seriously, this thing's at a 45-degree angle.
We should set it as a challenge this year, shouldn't we? For all the drive, who's the best at reverse parking?
Reverse
in a road car.
Yes.
Just,
reverse
Let's
parking
make it
challenge.
Happen. Let's make it happen. You heard it here first.
It's TV gold.
Who do you reckon would be the best at reverse parking?
See, this is what I love about testing. We come into the commentary box and none of us have got any idea the way this conversation is going to go.
No.
And I did not think reverse park challenge would be the one. I would put my money, well, actually, I'll put your money on, because you got more of it, on Fernando Alonso.
Really?
Yes.
Is this because he's the oldest driver on the grid with the most experience?
It's because Fernando Alonso doesn't do anything without doing his utmost best to win at all costs.
But you can't tell. Oh, we have. We've blown it already, and we've told them that it's our plan.
Well,
because he would go away and practice. He would go away and practice,
Yes,
practice with.
Yeah. That new space they've got for him at Silverstone at the factory.
He might be listening because he's not driving the car at the moment.
He's not. He's chatting to Pedro de la Rosa.
I reckon Carlos Sainz would do it with the most flair. I think it would he would take his dad's skills and he'd be like, he would slide it he would spin into a perfect position.
I am liking this already.
Hold a massive sideways drift before finally reversing into the spot. That's what Carlos would do, surely. Or maybe his dad would do it.
I think Nico would do pretty well.
Hulkenberg?
Did pretty well. Yeah, I think so.
Is that his official name this year, by the way?
Hulkenberg, I think it should be.
Welcome back, Hulkenberg.
Yeah, I think he's had a couple of years out. He's been driving his road car a lot more. I think,
yeah, good point.
Not being chauffeured around so much, I think he'd be pretty good.
Yeah.
You're a keen viewer of social media, Rachel Brooks. I've noticed a lot of Nico Hulkenberg training posts over the course of the winter. Like he's really enjoyed throwing himself back into the pre-season training routine, and he's got a spring in his step and a jaunty gait as he goes jogging around the streets of Monaco or the clifftop paths or whatever he's doing. But he just seems, unlike in his reserve driving days, that there's a purpose this year, and a proper purpose.
I think you're right, but I also think when any sportsman, and can tell you, when any sportsman stops doing the sport they love, you miss that routine, you miss all those elements that defined your day every day, and you get up and think, well, what shall I do? Well, I could go and train. I don't have to. I don't necessarily need to as much, but if you're getting back in the car, you've got that routine back. It's back to the life you had, and you probably didn't want to leave when you left it.
Yes, it's a really interesting point, Rachel. I mean, I'm going through that. I'm living through it right now, having retired. It'll be 2 years at the end of this year from racing, and I can't let go of the training. Like I say, I call it training for what? It's not, it's exercise, and straight away I've called it training. I'm not training
because
for
mentally
anything.
You need that.
Yeah, and so yeah, he's reinvigorated himself in that he really is training for it. He's got a purpose now, and it's a bizarre life that a racing driver leads. It's a bit all or nothing, when you're in the car, you're giving it everything. It is like being in the gym, and like we said, you don't get to do that very often. So when you're out of the car, you try to replicate that as much as you can, and give it your full energy when you are in the gym, and it's really got a purpose. You're training your neck muscles. They're so raw this time of the year. All of these drivers this evening or coming into tomorrow when the DOMs kick in, delayed muscle soreness, onset of muscle soreness.
Yeah.
when that kicks in, it's so painful when it's on the side of your neck and at the back of your neck from all the braking G-force. They're trying to replicate that the best they can in the gym. Most of the time, it's impossible to really achieve it 100%.
I remember when I went training with Sergio Perez, having to, you lie and you have your head elevated and the rest of your body, it's literally just the side of your foot touching the floor.
Yeah.
And you have to keep your whole body up using just your neck muscles. I couldn't do it. I couldn't get my arm off the floor to even try it.
Well, if you think about it, you know, your head weighs around 7 to 8 kilos with the helmet on as well. That's another half a kilo to a kilo all in with the paintwork that they put on. So that times 5 because of the G-force, that's going through your neck. Your head's literally trying to be pulled off of your body, and your neck supporting as you go through a corner. Even a slow speed corner like this one down at turn 8, you'll be pulling around 2.5 G through there. So it's incredible forces.
We saw, didn't we, Nick de Vries's neck yesterday in the paddock?
Yeah, that's beefed up since last year. He learned a lesson in Monza, didn't he? Yeah.
Oh, just a bit. Anthony, your buggy awaits. They've left the key in there for you. It is reverse parked, and you can take it away.
See you down at turn 1.
We look forward to it. Anthony is off, and in his place will come our second special guest of this hour. Rachel, you are the first special guest.
I was beginning to wonder.
As out on track, Max Verstappen, Alex Albon, this man you're watching now, Joe Guan Yu, George Russell, and just coming out, Pierre Gasly and Oscar Piastri. And, well, if we're going to talk about Pierre Gasly and Oscar Piastri, Pierre Gasly being an Alpine driver and Oscar Piastri being Australian, we really should say hello, good afternoon, good day, and welcome to Jack Doohan. That could not have been done any better, could it, really?
It's really not planned at all, hey?
It's like
surprisingly walked in the door.
It's like I was so chuffed you'd come and joined us, I'd actually thought about your intro.
Thank you very much for that. No, it was a nice intro. I think we keep it at that, though.
Yeah, that's it. That's the love gone now.
Definitely.
Romance.
Eyes forward, 2023. You know, we don't want to be stuck in the past.
Okay, let's not get stuck in the past then. Why was Pierre Gasly in the garage for a little bit? What was going on?
Setup changes. I think, you know, running through the day. I think, you know, it is testing, so we will be testing a lot at Alpine like everyone else. It's a new car, and you know, the mechanics need to get up to speed with everything as well, like the drivers. So things take a little bit of time, especially for what they want to be doing. So yeah, nothing's wrong. All good.
It's a really good point, actually, because it's not just the drivers. The mechanics need to learn how to fix this, how to put it all together. About 2 weeks ago, they'd have got the instructions for the year. This is how you build the car. They'd have all gone, well, we can't do that before the launch. They'd have done it with half a day to spare because they're clever people down there.
Exactly. You know, it's a new car, and they need to navigate their way around it too. It's obviously the drivers who have wake-up runs, you know, rebalance runs, but the team and all the crew obviously need to have, you know, a few rounds, honestly, before they get to grips with, you know, making changes, before that becomes fluid, and then by the end of the year, they can do it with their eyes closed.
How much experience have you got of this car yet in the sim?
In January, I was straight to a training camp with the Alpine Academy, and then I flew straight from there to a media day for the launch, and then straight to here for Formula 2 testing. So I've been very limited, and you know, thankfully Alpine are letting me focus a lot on my Formula 2 commitments, which is a much priority for this season, and then enabling me to also fulfill this amazing role as reserve driver.
And it's a role that has come to you, I would imagine, at a very good time in your career. How difficult is it to park the F1 bit when you've got the F2 bit that's your bread and butter and will probably go an awful lot further to getting you an F1 seat than just hanging around as a reserve driver?
For sure, trying to keep them, both very separate in a way as they are. Obviously, it's a racing car, it's a Formula car, but the characteristics of the two are so different that I really try and take what I can from the Formula 1 side of things, from being in an environment that is, in a way, so much more technical. I'm hearing so much information, I'm gathering so much more data, so that what I can really take from that is when I go back to Formula 2, obviously there's so much more differences, but I can really take that in the car. I have a brake balance tool, and I can flick through the pages, but apart from that, that's really about it. Though when I'm in the car for an FP1 or in the simulator, there's so much more going on, so much more that I'm doing, so it really helps when I come back into the Formula 2 car, and that's all I have to do over a lap.
If you're watching this right now, okay, so we're on board with Pierre, we can see his head bouncing up and down. But what else are you looking at? If you look at that right now, where are your eyes drawn?
I kind of see, from my perspective, definitely on how the car's behaving, how much lock he's having to put on, depending if the car's, snapping on the entry, if he's got any instability, or if, as he's releasing the brake, at the latter part of the mid-corner, if it's going to any bit of understeer. And then, if he already understanding that, then looking down at the dash as he could be, making balance adjustments with the tools that are provided in the car, seeing that's popping up, seeing if he already knows that there's going to be some issues that he's going to be having to come onto. I don't know currently what stage of the running is at, but potentially on lap 2, if this is the first run, that he would be, already know, okay, at turn 11 when I released the brake, I had a little bit of understeer, so I'm going to, change the diff mapping to help with that a little bit to get a little bit more rotation. So stuff like that to try and, understand in his eyes really what he's going through, because in a way, that's why I'm here, to shadow the drivers, to understand as much as I can. So if, need be worst case, I was having to hop in the car, I know almost as much as they do.
I'm listening while you're talking, and I can hear the car scraping along a little bit and, on the surface, and I'm also thinking that's a bit, that's a bump, but there are times when I'm thinking, is that a bit of porpoising in the car at the moment?
I don't know, it's early days. I don't know what they're doing either, with the car. So, everything could be planned. It could not be. That's why we're here. That's on the 3-day testing. There's some vicious bumps around the circuit as well. The one particularly that I found in Formula 2 testing that had gotten worse from last year was that big bump before the 150-meter board down into turn 1, which you could either go to mid-track before the braking and kind of try and miss it, or stay very to the left. But, what I found was it's gotten more aggressive and it's filled out, in most part of the circuit. So it's something that you're just having to deal with, kind of brace and hoping that the car settles enough before braking, because, it's so important that you have, all 4 corners and all the car kind of flat as it can be when you're hitting, the brake at max pressure. So, yeah.
I thought you were going to come in.
Well, I was going to say, actually, what chance? I mean, Felipe Drugovich obviously wouldn't have expected to be at testing and driving the car this weekend. If something similar to happen, we don't want it to happen, but if it would you get a shot in the car? Would you see you in the car this year, do you think?
I would love to. And, that in the end is a decision that Alpine will make. And, I would like to hope so, that I would be able to get in the car, and I'm sure I could fulfill the role and do a good job for the team, and that's really why I'm here, and to try and get time in the simulator and know as much about this 2023 car as possible, so that if that does come, I'm ready, and more so to really fill that role and do as well as possible.
I did joke with Felipe and Stoffel at the Aston Martin launch, actually, that, that whatever you're doing this year, is there a part of you that is secretly hoping Fernando or Lance twist their ankle at some stage?
So you gave Felipe the idea. you planned.
Yeah, but then I didn't give him the idea for Lance to fall off his bike. That was taking it a little bit too far. But it's like being a reserve goalkeeper, isn't it? There's only one place as a reserve goalkeeper, so you're secretly kicking the ball a bit harder towards the goalkeeper in training. You've got to keep yourself ready at all times, and obviously you don't want Pierre or Oscar or Esteban, I should say, to I've just been tapped on the shoulder by your PR man. Well, honestly, James, that was a slip of the tongue. I didn't mean that.
There's a little dig, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't. No, there's plenty to have a dig about him being a Liverpool fan. I'm not going to talk anything else with him today about. It's once in a while I can talk football with a smile on my face. No, what was I going to say?
No, for sure. About Esteban and Pierre, I would, not
you don't want him to get hurt.
No, of course not. For me, I want the best thing possible for the team, and as much as I'd love to get in the car and be able to race and be able to drive, I just don't have the experience in the car or the time in the car that they would have through the season. So, to say that I would do a job on par or, would be amazing, but better, it's just unfortunately not possible.
Yeah.
So, right now and for the season, the 2 drivers have the best possible chance to score as many points as possible for the team. And that's the goal.
Any FP1 sessions?
I'm sure they will come. So I'm looking forward to those when the opportunity comes. I was in Mexico and Abu Dhabi last year, which was an awesome experience, and I look forward to really being able to get back in the car and really feel it.
Stoffel that Aston Martin can't take part in an FP1 session because he's too experienced, he's had too many races. So Felipe will get those. You are still classified as a complete rookie because you haven't done a race yet, so you're okay for the FP1 session. But you got your super license points and everything as well.
Everything in that, yeah. I have my license, so it's that's all in gear, and yeah, ready to take those, to fulfill those commitments.
Nice. So let's talk F2 then for the season. How's that going to go?
I think well. You know, I ended the season very well last year. A lot of stuff outside of my control dictated, a streak of DNFs. But you know, that's reality, and that's in motorsport. So I know it was just getting all those critters out of the way for this 2023 season, and Alpine and my Virtuosi team are giving me the best possible opportunity to really give me a shot at obviously achieving that goal and winning the title. I feel like I'm in a good position to do so.
That is really bumpy, isn't it, down the straight? And that's the big bump you were talking about.
Yeah, exactly.
Just by the 150-meter board.
You know, this will, not say on purpose, but this is a time where they're trying to figure out how low they can go. You know, what is the limit? Where can we find time? Where is it also going to be a discomfort for the drivers? Because it gets to a point where you're going to be bottoming so much that it's going to start to be porpoising that you actually you can't see the 150 board from the 100, and it's starting to be a hindrance on your driving.
But the AOM, the aerodynamic oscillating monitor, I think.
Yes, the new sensor that's been added this year.
That should counteract the porpoising. That should stop any porpoising because that will set a limit that the teams can't go below.
Yeah,
I think
that's the theory, isn't it?
The theory, but in a way they're still going to be wanting to push the limits to see what they can get, how their car is also going to be behaving under these sort of conditions when they're trying to do that.
That was what they were all trying to work on last year, wasn't it? Where can we find that absolutely fine line between getting as low as we can, but the least amount of porpoising?
Which, to be fair, Alpine did. Alpine seemed to be struggling less with porpoising, certainly at the start of the season, than others.
No, for sure. I can't talk too much on that, especially at the start of last year, as my role in Formula One was very low until that point. So, I would be lying to go too much into depth on that side of things. But it's something that from an outside, from an academy member that I saw was something that they're on top of. But it's then just maximizing the rest of the car, as even as you could see with having not as much issues as other teams like Mercedes or etc. We still didn't have that outright pace. So there's a lot more to the package to just that.
How's your French, by the way?
I'm not even going to attempt to speak any. I was going to try. I don't want to show anyone up, so I'm going to say that it's in the back there.
Excellent, because you have, as an inspirational figure, as an ambassador, as someone who can come and give you motivation
I knew this
and
was
advice,
coming.
Zinedine Zidane.
Zizou. Yeah.
Absolute legend. But I'm told he doesn't speak English. So how are you going to get inspiration?
I tell you what you do. So your press officer also doesn't really speak French, but has been told he needs to learn. So I think the two of you should have a challenge to the end of the year to see who has the better French.
Definitely.
May we?
Oui.
You think that's fair?
No, I'm going
to.
How's your French, James?
Très mal.
Yeah, it's honestly one of those things that, okay, yeah, I'm going to work on it. I'm going to actually try. And it's been delayed. And, obviously it would be great. It would be awesome to, come up to Laurent and speak in French and see him with that wow factor. And it would be great to, show the team in Viry and really show the Alpine and Renault brand that, I'm committed to that side of things as well. So it will be something that I'm going to be working on in the near future. And then, will help in circumstances like this.
Well, also, the two drivers, we were with
they've
them the
done
other
very
day,
well
and
with their
they
French, haven't they?
have done very well.
They've done superbly.
But they were speaking. Hey, great accents too. They were speaking in French to each other the whole time, and so I think if you're part of that team, it can only be a bonus if you actually can speak, because the conversations they're going to have, and also with other members of the team now, learning French, I guess, is.
For sure, members of the team obviously come in all different nationalities, but with both drivers being French and and you know the brand, the base, and very being French, you know, it can only be a benefit. And to have that sort of, you know, not extra edge, but extra sort of information to be able to be included on is great.
I'll give you a few phrases, it's fine.
Okay, thank you. You give me a few hints.
I did A-level French literature. So I had to read books in French, translate them, write an essay in French on the book. Yeah, don't ask. Don't
The
ask.
Google Translate was not a thing.
Oh, no. Like, everything was in black and white still. No, there was no Google Translate, and we had authors. Gustave Flaubert, where you read, Guy de Maupassant.
And you've used
You're
this,
looking at me vacantly.
well, you've used this how in your life? See?
Yeah. It's all right when I go to France.
For the day.
But the thing is, the French speak very good English, so I don't get to use it.
That is the problem that we face. Rivals, challengers, F2.
I think, you know, there'll be quite a lot. I'd say there's probably 10 guys on the grid, honestly, that will be able to, you know, fight for a pole, for a win, you know, on their day, and when the team's in order. You know, a lot of people have been saying, you know, people say obviously, you know, you could potentially be a, you know, title contender and whatnot, but you know, I'm thinking as another year, you know, I need to focus on myself and really maximize my potential, my team's potential, you know, in every lap, session, round, race, and I, you know, am confident and positive that if I do that, then it will give me, you know, a very good shot at achieving what we want to achieve. You go into depth and analyze your rivals and try and understand things better, but you know, I don't want to take that focus away from, you know, where it should be, and in the end, I, you know, focus on what's in my control.
Knowing that there are that many challenges to a title within a series, does that intensify the pressure or ease it a little bit? If you don't pick up a win, but you do pick up consistent points, is that actually better than, well, win one week and then a DNF and then...
No,
you know,
exactly. You know, consistency is going to be key, and in a way we're in motorsport, so reliability, technical issues, things they're going to be outside of your control, and so to make sure that to be dominant, that'd be amazing. But to be, you know, collecting those points, getting 20+ weekends, you know, per round, that's what's going to, you know, win you know, a driver championship.
Oh, don't.
Give us a comment on this. Valtteri Bottas, who has had a significant Australian influence in his life, and has now appeared at a racetrack, as I said earlier, looking like he could be playing for the West Coast Eagles, quite frankly.
Yeah, I'm, you know,
You don't
good for him.
go for the mullet.
I'm not
You
going
don't have
for
a
the
mullet.
No, I've been running a shaved head for a couple of years now, and I just, you know, had my own razor, kind of shaved it every 2 weeks, and usually grew it out over the winter.
Yeah,
and
you've got the
would
winter
shave
quiff
it.
going on at the moment.
Exactly, and yeah, now I'm becoming, you know, hopefully a little bit more marketable, having a little bit of something going on there. All the mechanics are paying me out, saying, "Oh, did all the barbers in Australia pass away today?" And these sort of comments. But you know,
They're just jealous you have a full, thick head of hair.
exactly.
That's the
You know,
problem.
it's just jealousy.
Yeah.
Valtteri Bottas looks the spitting image, and you will get this reference, of Jack from season 9 of Married at First Sight Australia. Jack is married to Dominica, who currently is at war and coming to blows with Olivia, and this has been my binge watch TV over the winter.
I watched series 1 and 2, and then I gave up the will.
Really?
Yeah.
You went into it?
I was then, but I
Yeah.
can't keep going back to it
No, you can. I'm on series 9.
Oh no!
Series 9.
Yeah.
And you watched the full
Wow.
series?
Yeah, we see, as a man who got engaged over the winter, you see, this has given me proper.
Congratulations.
Thank you very much. This has given me proper marital tips.
Yes.
On how
On
not
how
to
not
do
to
How
do
not
it.
to do it.
Yes.
Isn't it just the greatest series on the planet, though?
It's juicy, to say the least. It is juicy. Provides you know, a good evening of entertainment. It's, you know, light-hearted in a way. You know, it can very enjoyable, I guess, if you're into those things. Which
Well, the winter nights have flown by. I'm at episode 25. No spoilers, please, because I think the next episode is when Dion is going to find out that
Oh,
his bride
don't.
has been doing, you know, some horrible things behind his back with Daniel, whose bride left him a few weeks ago. This is how into it I'm getting.
Good
Ouch.
grief. I remember the series where the lady with the red hair married the really sweet guy who was into his cricket and might have been an ex-cricketer originally, and they've now had kids. And I thought, I like that story. I'm going to stop there.
Yeah.
That's a win.
Yeah.
I don't
That's
need
a
to
win
watch
for me.
anymore.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen in this series, I tell you. Meanwhile, down at turn 1, Anthony Davidson.
He's speechless.
Hi, Crofty. Hi, guys. No, I can hear you. I can hear you. Yes, so standing down here.
It's a long way away, Rachel, turn one. He's on a delay.
It is a delay, Crofty. No, I'm just winding you up. So, yeah, down into turn one, you approach this corner at just under 180 miles an hour, and you're looking to the left-hand side where the camera's pointing, the red and white curb. As you get to that red and white curb, that's your braking zone. We see a little lock-up there from the Williams as you come to one of the slowest corners on the track at turn one itself. You run a lot of exit curb for good measure on the exit of turn two. What you're trying to do in turn one is to slow it right down, get right to the apex near that bollard. I don't know if you can just spin the camera around, just look at the bollard on the inside, Bob, there. So yeah, as the Mercedes of George Russell comes to you, do you want to just get as close to that curb as possible, pinch it in tighter and compromise the exit of one to open up turn two as much as you can. The Ferrari of Carlos Sainz follows Russell behind. The McLaren just comes through there now. Oscar Piastri was looking really good actually last lap. This is a slower lap for him. Last lap he was pushing, looking really good on the exit of two. The car just dancing around. You can see he's got full confidence already behind the wheel of that McLaren. Whether the car itself will be allowing him to get up the top of the timesheets, we'll see that later, but just in terms of what I'm looking at for the driver and their comfort and confidence in the car, he looks right there already, and this slow speed part of the track. Like I say, what you're trying to do here is really gain some time on the braking. You've got the wind, I can feel it here, blowing in kind of that direction, just offset to the main straight, and it's going to be pushing the car towards the apex of turn one. You're fighting that wind as you slow the car down, so you are seeing some lockups into this corner. As here comes the Alfa Romeo. I saw a bit of a lock up there from the last lap, but it looks okay this time around. You can really see how they bring the car back towards us momentarily to help ease the corner of turn two. It's a really important part of the track, this one, when you're fighting lap time, to make sure you can get on power as early as you can through that very part there where the Williams heads now. So yeah, that's what it's all about down here at turn one and turn two. We'll maybe make our way around the track to a different part, maybe find a slightly higher speed section. Back to you guys.
Thank you very much indeed, Anthony Davidson. Great to have you trackside, and you get a very, very different perspective of the cars when you stand that close to the track, which I shall be doing this afternoon if you fancy a little wander. Rachel Brooks, Mary says, please stop butchering the French language. To you and to myself. And Jesse Young, on behalf of a huge amount of people who tweeted me in the last 10 minutes, would like to wish good luck to Jack Doohan from all of his Australian viewers, really hoping he's in contention for the F2 title this year. That's Jesse, everyone in Australia, and your mum.
Who has just messaged him.
I know.
Yes.
In French?
In French.
Do you want me to translate that for you?
Yes.
Thank you for giving us this opportunity to talk with you.
Exactly. I was just going to say that actually when I was thinking about the French that I wanted to bring back. And j'aime la F1, which is I love F1. Did I say that correctly?
J'aime.
Yeah, I could have. Yeah, j'aime. I could have said that properly, but as I said, I didn't want to show anyone.
Get used to that one. That will come in handy. Yeah, either this year if you need to step in, or in future seasons to come. Just before you go though, a lot of people are saying this is going to be a Bonza year, if I could use the Australian, for Ripper for Alpine. Straight on, mate.
Straight on, mate.
It's going to be an absolute... No, not there. That would be a very bad idea for Oscar. It's going to be a brilliant year. I've put myself on. For Alpine. A lot of people tipping the team to make significant progress. Have you seen that behind the scenes?
100%. No, everyone in the team wants to get to the top. We're not content with being a midfield team. We want to strive for success and strive for podiums, race wins, and world championships. We know that doesn't happen overnight. You could have you could get every best engineer, mechanic, and team principal from Formula One and put them in a team. And if the chemistry isn't right, if they're not all put in the right position, that it won't happen. So we know that we have a very good crew of people to do that, and we're taking it step by step, to achieve where we want to. Like I said, it doesn't happen overnight, but I'm very happy to see the team's progress and to see where we're heading.
And one of the biggest young driver programs now as well. So looking to the future and taking putting more into that as well.
Yeah, definitely. You know, we have a great program at the moment, you know, filled with really good drivers, and, you know, with Victor in Formula 2 with me as well, and Gabriele Mini and Nicola Soloff in Formula 3, who, you know, I rate very highly both, and are very talented drivers. So, you know, I'm looking forward to watching them both as well, and speaking with them to see how their seasons is going.
Mega. Jack, thanks for joining us, mate.
Amazing. Thank you guys
Thank
so much.
you.
Big
Great
great to have
having
It was a ripper time for you.
It was absolutely fair dinkum, one of my favourite moments of the day. Jack Doohan with us live here
Thank
from
you guys
the
so
commentary
much.
box. Take
Thank
care,
you
my
very
friend.
much.
Thanks, Jack.
Have a
Thank you.
brilliant
Take
season
care.
as
Thank
well.
you guys so much. Enjoy
And-
the rest of your day.
You too.
We certainly shall. And we look forward to seeing Jack in F2 action, of course, throughout the season. And a couple of F1 practice sessions too. He's got to go now because he's got to go and talk to partners and sponsors over the lunch break. And his PR handler is also hungry,
Yes.
so they've got to leave the commentary box.
Hungry or hangry?
I think a bit of both. Take care, Jack. Thank you, James. Interestingly, Jack was talking there about, you know, the academy and the young driver development program they've got going on at Alpine. And I thought, watching the launch, one of the really interesting facets was the way that they've now brought Nicola Adams, who was sensational
Yes.
in the boxing ring, and a real inspiration to young athletes of both sexes, it has to be said. But someone outside of F1 to come and work with the young girls in the academy. I think that's an outstanding move from Alpine.
Absolutely. You can always learn from somebody at the top of their game in another field. Absolutely you can, because there'll be things that you don't think of because you get so entrenched into motorsport that actually you don't look outside of motorsport for inspiration or for people who can inspire you. And yes, absolutely, I think it's a fantastic decision.
And to tie in with what Nicola is going to be working on, we have some details announced today of the F1 Academy itself.
Yes.
And the way that racing series is going to shape up for the future.
Indeed, it's 7 rounds of 21 with a total of 21 races. There'll be a support event, the final round at the United States Grand Prix as well, so they'll be there experiencing the Formula One weekend.
Which is brilliant, because that was always the intention, wasn't
Yes.
it? To have at least one round to dovetail with F1 and to bring, you know, the racers in to say, right, look, it's been a bit like the old days of Bullseye, you know, not look what you could have won, but look what you could get. And I think that's a super move.
And their races are all on the Formula One circuit, so they'll be in Spielberg in Austria, well, apart from Valencia in Spain, but then Barcelona, Zandvoort, Monza, Le Castellet, and then finishing up in Austin, 11th to 12th of April at Barcelona will be an official test session, and then they'll have 13 more days testing throughout the season. And the race weekend format, they'll have 2 free practice sessions of 40 minutes each, 2 qualifying sessions of 15 minutes each, and all events will have 3 races. Races 1 and 3 will be 30 minutes long, and the race 2 in the middle will only be 20 minutes long.
Fantastic. Good luck to all involved on that one. The F1 Academy debuting this year. On track at the moment, the 2-time world champion Max Verstappen. You'll notice that he's gone purple through the first sector with a 29.4. It's about a tenth of a second faster than Carlos Sainz's best sector in that first part of the lap, making his way up through turn 12 to the highest point of the track, and keeping out of the way of any trouble. Verstappen now half a second under that 1:33.25 target time of Carlos Sainz, with 38.5 minutes to go of the morning session on day 1 of the 3-day pre-season test. Max Verstappen is about to set the fastest time, and does so by nearly 3 tenths. Now, he lost a little bit in the final sector. Now, was that, I wonder, because the Mercedes, George Russell, slightly distracted him a little bit coming through turn 13? I don't know. Were his tyres going off a touch? I'm not quite sure, because I'm not in the car and I haven't asked him yet, Rachel Brooks. But a decent time nonetheless from Max Verstappen to go fastest in this morning session.
And interestingly, shows us how much they've developed these cars over the last 12 months, because the fastest time here on day 1 in Bahrain last year was Pierre Gasly with a 1:33.9 in the Alpha Tauri. So
we're a second quicker.
We're a second quicker, and we're only at lunch on day 1. So by the end of today, we will be quicker still, I would imagine. And then that's huge progress, I think, from the teams throughout the last 12 months.
Yeah. And especially with the changes made, of course, to the leading edges of the floor and that 15 mil raise.
Do you think we could get back even to 2021 times?
Well, that's what the engineers always chase, don't they? records are there to be broken, lap records are there to be broken, track limits are
Yes.
there to be broken on that particular case for Max, although track limits don't really count, it is testing. But you never say never, and you never also fail to be impressed by engineers, drivers, and the way that they work together to continually push each other to greater things to come. Nico Hülkenberg, 181 race starts in his Formula One career, still without a podium in his Formula One career, back for another shot at that elusive podium that I really want to happen for Nico Hülkenberg, because he deserves it. This man was absolutely superb in his junior racing career, and he's rode up to Formula One, and has been brilliant at times in F1 too, but has never, as yet, stood on that podium. It will surely come his way one day.
And you think about when he stepped in at Racing Point, as it was, and performed brilliantly in those couple of races he had to do. He clearly still has the talent. It just depends what car he's going to have under him this year.
To me, it was all about motivation. You know, what was Nico Hülkenberg's motivation to come back into Formula One, given that in the interim time, you know, he has a child now and he'd got married, you know, was he as hungry for success? But I actually think the way he's looked at pre-season, and he's looked at the challenge of coming and joining Haas, that motivation is clearly there, that hunger and that desire is clearly there, and I think, you know, he and Kevin Magnussen, whatever we might think about their various exchanges and altercations in the past, will push each other to be very good teammates. I think Kevin Magnussen needs a teammate like Nico Hülkenberg, and Nico Hülkenberg needs a teammate like Kevin Magnussen. Anthony Davidson is back with us.
I thought I was going to go around two other corners, but they've dragged me back in here with you two.
Why?
I don't know. I was enjoying that.
I mean, look, obviously we
I want to
missed.
see the cars on the track.
I beg your pardon.
Sorry, what did you see when you were out there?
Well, like I said, I got to see, the main thing I saw was how on top of the car that Oscar Piastri was. I was quite surprised by that, actually. You know, bearing in
Tell
mind,
us what you mean by on top of the car.
just the confidence that he had to wrestle the car around and place it where he wanted it to go, a bit like that man on the right-hand side would have done back in his day, Jean Alesi. Yeah, he looked good. It looked like he was able to control it, but also be on the ragged edge of the car, not driving within the grip too much. He was able to let it move around. He was happy to have the rear moving around on the exit of turn 2. It's a shame the camera wasn't on him at the time when he did that. He was just a bit late getting to that point, but it looked like he was right on the edge of adhesion of the front right tyre as he came to turn 1, where the Alpine makes its way now, and you could just see the tyres start to under-rotate, as they call it, just before it starts to lock up properly. So he's right on the edge of the braking capabilities of the car. Then he was right on the edge of the rear capability on the exit of turn 2. And I thought, they're good signs. He was right on top of it there. I'll wait for later to go around to other parts of the track to hopefully see him in action there. But it's clear, this is a track he's always gone well at. In the junior categories, and yeah.
So is that, would you say that's a responsive car, or is that him figuring out how to get the most out of it? Can you tell?
No, the car didn't look that responsive.
Right.
And it's him was able to just be comfortable with the fact it was trying to move around and snap on him and things like that. So they were just little signs that sometimes you see a young driver get in and they're very tentative and they don't really hustle the car too much. They drive just almost like an AI driver would, just like a robotic driver, just as I say, join the dots driver, you know, from the outside of the track to the apex to the exit, and you never see the car moving around twitching like we just saw with Gasly there through the exit of 11. He's right on the edge of, you know, squeezing the throttle a bit too hard on the exit, and so there he's using all the track on the exit of turn 13. Sometimes when you see a rookie jump on board, they don't use too much curb, they don't let the car move around and snap on them too much. So I thought they were good signs. I shouldn't really be that surprised. You know, like I say, he's very comfortable around this track. But yeah, bearing in mind this is just day one in a brand new car for him, I thought it was pretty encouraging.
And not all drivers have the same feel as well. Some drivers need the car to do what they want and they can get the best out of it. Others can feel their way through issues.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the same riding on board with Russell here. You see the exit he's just got there? Yeah, no, you're pointing at the screen, Rachel, with the wires. There's sensors on the steering wheel. We'll find out what they're all about later. But that exit that Russell had out of turn 1 and turn 2 is exactly what I was trying to describe standing down there. You saw that Russell pinched it in more than the Alpine in front of Gasly, and then he was able to get a nicer run through 2, and that comes to fruition through the kink of turn 3 up the hill, lives with you all the way up the hill to turn 4, where he got the overtake done. I know he's probably on fresher tyres or whatever at this stage of the test, but you could still see it play out with the different lines that they were taking.
On the subject of Oscar Piastri, or more importantly his team, Andrea Stella as team principal, did that come as a surprise? I wonder, was he being earmarked for a team principal role? Didn't come as a surprise to me that Andreas Seidel left, maybe a bit earlier than we thought. We assumed he was going off to Sauber before they become Audi. But Andreas Stella as team principal, and how big a job has he got to start to lift the fortunes once again of a team that we all want to see do so well, because we all love McLaren because they've been in the sport for so long and you know, have produced some absolutely epic moments in Formula One, but are underperforming to a certain extent.
Yeah, in the same way that we've heard positive rumours about the likes of Alpine and Aston Martin.
We're not hearing them about McLaren, are we?
It's almost the opposite, isn't it, down at McLaren? Here's that replay, by the way. We'll just go back to it. So look how we pinch the car in tighter on the exit of turn 1, and we open up turn 2 more, get a straighter run on the exit, and it plays out through turn 3, and now you're in the slipstream. You could just see how you're constantly thinking about not just placing your car out of the turbulent air in front of you, but also allowing, he's on DRS as well for good measure, but you're allowing yourself to have a straighter run on the exit, which puts less ask through the rear tyres of the car, because you're not trying to accelerate and corner at the same time as much. Because of the way you've placed the car, you're arriving at the corner straighter.
That wasn't very straight from Felipe Drogovic.
No. So. And these are the kind of mistakes you would expect from, you know, a rookie jumping in to a car that's unfamiliar to them. And that's what I wasn't seeing with Oscar Piastri. He looked totally confident with what that car was trying to throw at him.
We have said Oscar Piastri, we think, is the real deal for quite some time, and could be a really explosive rookie to come and compete in Formula One. But let's just go back. Are his team going to give him the car that Australia and a lot of the rest of the world wants him to have? And it's a big question mark.
It is. While you say it's almost the opposite at McLaren, I would say expectations are more tempered. I wouldn't say, you know, the opposite of being excited. I would say expectations seem to be a bit more tempered. But yes, at the moment, it's a big ask. There's a lot of pressure on him, isn't there, at the moment? And also, you would say in turn Lando, because he's up against Lando. Lando's, you know, I wouldn't want to say he's seen off Daniel Ricciardo, but he outperformed Daniel Ricciardo when he came in, and was a little bit quiet when Daniel arrived, not sure how that was going to play out, and he beat him quite convincingly. So it's going to be fascinating to see how that plays out between the two of them. But in terms of the car, yes, Andreas Stella did a big job.
I wonder who's going to feel more pressure, who's more under the spotlight this year at McLaren, Oscar Piastri or Stella?
I think Andrea Stella.
Yeah, I kind of feel as well. I mean, and I think particularly if the car isn't fast and the driver's taken away from the spotlight, that you're not at the top of the timesheets, your eye always goes to the top of the timesheets, and you're almost ignored. So in a way, it's
not a bad year.
It's selfishly speaking on his behalf, it's almost better in your rookie season if you're up against a driver like Lando Norris to not be right at the sharp end with all eyes at you. Oh, your teammate's on pole position. Where are you? Oh, only 6th or 7th. But if you're thinking, oh, Norris is 12th and Piastri is 16th, 14th, it doesn't have the same impact, does it? It's not there. So it is better, I think, psychologically for the rookie driver to be learning your trade out of the spotlight.
I think there's big pressure, especially with McLaren losing out to Alpine last year, especially if Aston Martin are up there battling away for 4th place as well. McLaren could find themselves down in 6th at the end of the season, or even worse, if the car isn't that great. look, at the moment, Oscar Piastri's 9th out of 10th in terms of the times, but it is testing, and I haven't said it yet. So for all those that are playing testing bingo, I should say it now. Times are pretty irrelevant over the next 3 days. Cross that one off your bingo card now. But we do like to look at the times because, let's face it, gives us all something to do, and it is a bit of a yardstick as well. And Felipe Drugovich has been pushing throughout this lap, and will record surely his best time so far, but it still keeps him in 10th place with a 1:35.3. 32 laps completed from Felipe Drugovich. He lost time this morning when his car stopped out on track. It was a sensor issue coupled with the ECU. Nothing more than that. That's the only red flag we've had so far. Ted Kravitz, down to you.
Thank you, Crofty. Yes, hello again, and welcome to the baking hot sun here at the beautiful Bahrain International Circuit and to the Williams garage. And this is where I've been for the last hour or so, just getting a word with Logan Sargent ahead of the rest of the test. He's in the car this afternoon. Now, of course, you're right in that we tend not to look at the lap times. There's not really much point in doing it. As we see Oscar Piastri now coming out for another run. A very recognisable crash helmet. Not the neon green of Lando Norris, a bit more of Aussie blue and some yellow in there, as well as some red. But yeah, there's Oscar with a practice start. But yeah, I think what was significant was how many laps Albon has done in this new Williams. So most laps of all, I believe, at the moment, and enough for third quickest. So clearly it's reliable, which is good. And what Logan Sargent was saying from his time in the car so far, from the shakedowns that they've done, is that they're much better on the unpredictable nature of that car at the limit. This is a frequent thing we heard from Nicholas Latifi and Alex Albon last year, wasn't it? The way it was just unpredictable on the limit. There was always a sort of pinhead of sweet spot of the car when it would have good downforce and everything was out of balance. And the moment you fell off that very narrow edge, then the car was very difficult to drive, or at least Latifi found it hard to drive most of the time, more than Alex Albon, you could argue. What Logan Sargent said was, compared to last year's car, which he also drove, this car is much better. And for that, for me, will be music to any Williams supporters' ears, and something that Logan Sargent can really grab hold of, because that's the kind of car he needs. Maybe, Anthony, you can expand on this from a rookie's point of view. That's the kind of car he needs under him. So Albon is still out on track. There's the Williams pit wall, looking very symmetrical in their 3x3, and a little shot for you inside the Williams garage, where they look as happy as you can be with the car going on at the moment.
Thank you, Ted. Still not sure about the dark blue and the light blue.
No?
On the shirts.
It's different. They stand out amongst the sea of carbon fibre that we see on the cars these days.
I'm loving the McLaren still. Beautifully designed livery on the McLaren. Thank you very much indeed. Liking that. Thank you, Zach. I'm interested to see how much pink is going to be on the Alpine for the first 3 races of the season, because obviously paint equals weight.
Yes, very true. I mean, they have a whole pink car if they want to run it.
Yeah, which obviously is, you know, a sponsor's choice on that one, but you don't want to be painting the whole car pink, unless, of course, you're way under the weight limit. Talking of which, it's really complicated, the minimum weight limit. Well, it was for me. But last year, 298 kilograms without fuel, minimum car weight. Yeah. This time last year, that figure was increased by 3 kilograms because of all the porpoising and the teams having to put stays and stuff in. A reduction of 2 kilograms was proposed for this year, but Pirelli have brought some new tyres with new construction, and that's raised the weight of the 4 tyres by 2 kilograms, so that's absolutely offset itself. But each car's also got new electronic boxes mandated by the FIA, which are about half a kilo in weight. So in effect, you've gone down by 2 kilos, but the tyres and the boxes have given you a 2.5 kilo increase. So teams have had to find at least a half a kilo's worth of extra savings in terms of the weight, which is quite a challenge for them.
You're not alone in that, because Ant and I had this discussion this morning, because
did you?
we spoke to various
how
people.
Time flies by when you two are chatting.
I know, talking about
It's
2
the kind
kilos.
of chat we have. Yeah.
So we had this discussion. We actually asked several different people who all came back with different answers. So Ant messaged somebody in a team and got a very typical engineer answer, as we discussed, because we were saying we think that 2 kilogram limit's been written off, that the 2 kilogram drop has been written off because the teams opposed it so much. And they were back to the weight that they were at the end of last season.
No, they're back to the weight that they were, plus half a kilo, because the tyres are heavier.
Plus half a kilo, yes, because of the...
Well, the answer I got was the limit is 798 kilograms. So, 2 kilograms heavier this year.
Yeah.
Heavier than it was at the start of last year.
Not at last year.
Not at the end of last year. Not at the end of last year. Changes for the floor stays. Anyway, we got there in the end, but you were not alone, Crofty, in being confused by that, because people in the garages below us also ended up a little bit confused.
That's what I love about F1.
It's so simple.
And see, I love these things as well. The F1 Commission met, didn't it?
They did.
And proposed a load of new alterations to the sporting regulations, which now have to be voted by the World Motorsport Council before they can be adopted into the sporting regs. And the World Motorsport Council meet next on...
No idea.
Next week, isn't it?
Will be Thursday today? Yeah,
Yes.
week tomorrow.
Yes.
So until then, the sporting regs for this year are not going to be published because they haven't been voted on.
But one that is good is the proposal that we don't have what happened in Japan last year.
Oh yeah, no, it is. It's absolutely the right thing. And all they've done with the points reduction because of a reduced number of laps is write it the way the rule was intended to have been written in the first place, before it was written up wrong and no one had spotted it until Japan, when they spotted it too late because the race had already finished and they all thought that Max was on reduced points. That's the most confusing sentence I'm going to utter all season long.
But it was my line of the year.
Yeah, no,
Max Verstappen, world champion.
It's great. And he was world champion. When Johnny Herbert told him he was world champion, he didn't know himself until then. The thing is, why is it we can't have these meetings and discussions a little bit sooner so that we can actually all know what the rules are going into the season before the Friday, which I do believe is first practice, for the first race of the season? It's all happened a little bit last minute. I agree with a lot of the rewrites, and fair play to the likes of Steve Nielsen, for instance, now working with the FIA and the team managers who've been working tirelessly through the winter to simplify the wording of some of the rules. It needs to be a bit faster in the process.
We had the confusion in Monaco as well, didn't we?
Yes.
Last year, with the exit of the white line and everything else going on.
Well, yeah, well, that was because a cut and paste had happened from the previous year's race directors' events notes, but the rule had been changed in the intervening time, but the race directors that had replaced the previous race director didn't know that the rule had been changed, and they did a cut and paste, and Ferrari tried to appeal, but were told, no, you can't appeal because actually they did nothing wrong. Yeah.
It'll all be cleared up a week tomorrow.
I will spend Friday night of next week reading the sporting regulations, which I try and do at the start of every season. Have you ever
You had a go at us for our chat.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, at least I do this one on my own. Have you ever read Anthony Davidson? As a former driver in Formula One, have you read the sporting regs from page to page?
From a driver's point of view, yes.
Well done.
Just from a driver's point of view. I mean, page to page, probably not, but you have to know the ins and outs of when you can start to speed up, and you know, when the safety car comes in, which line you can be. Can you overtake when you're in the pit lane, when you come to the safety car line, if the train of cars is already on track, you know, all that kind of stuff. You really need to be on it.
Yeah.
Look at Vettel coming into the pits in China, I forget the year, where he overtook a car coming out, you know, 2 wheels off the track, overtook a car, and everyone went, oh, he had read the rules. He knew he could do that before the pit lane speed limit line. Things like that. The more you understand, it can play to your advantage. Absolutely. In the heat of the moment. Yeah, George Russell, was it last year? No, I think it was last year, yeah, at Paul Ricard with Sergio Perez, the battle they had with the VSC.
Yeah.
And George knew that if he just slowed down a little bit and then accelerated just before the lights went out and you could accelerate again, caught Sergio napping, he knew that if you're allowed to slow down a little bit and re-accelerate before the lights go out on your dash, rather than just sitting there on 0 time delta, he went a bit under purposely so that he could then be at 0 when he was already having some momentum in the car. Stuff like that you need to be really on top of.
Round of applause for the FIA.
Go on.
Tom at the FIA has just messaged me to say, Crofty, in the spirit of what you're talking about, indeed those regs were put to an e-vote of the World Motorsport Council. So technology being used here. And are now approved. So in time for the start of the season, I have some bedtime reading in between testing and
Lucky
the
you found
first
your
race.
glasses.
Honestly,
Lucky you found
lucky
your
I found my glasses.
Yeah.
I thought I'd lost my glasses this morning. So Tuesday night, I know we were going to have an awful lot of fun. We're going to go out downtown Manama and see what's what. I'm now reading the sporting
This is
race.
even better.
That's made Ant's week as well. Ant's even happier now. He doesn't have to go out.
If you want to read the sporting regs, Tom from the FIA says they've just gone up on the FIA website, FIA.com, so you can dig in, and I shall.
I was going to say to you that maybe they couldn't get everyone together, but actually in the days now where we've been so used to doing all these video calls, you no longer have to get everybody together in the same room. So, yeah, brilliant.
That's a proper Zoom meeting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Isn't F1 Zoom? Can I get
Yes.
it? No?
Zoom. Yeah, thanks.
Other platforms are
Great.
available.
Yeah.
Sadly, other gags are not. Nothing has improved over the winter.
Oh, we learned that when you first arrived, didn't it?
That's a very good point. Well made.
Oh dear.
Yuki Tsunoda at the wheel of the AlphaTauri. Don't get confused, it's not an Alfa Romeo with the Orlan sponsorship on it.
Yes, the blue
New
logo.
for this year.
It's really confusing.
It is quite
Yeah.
confusing. Luckily, they put a nice 22, his number, racing
Great.
number, right in front of the.
No, that's just
the
last year's
there.
Halo they're using.
But yeah, good one. So Yuki at the wheel there. I saw on the exit of turn 8, it looked like quite a lack of traction going on from that AlphaTauri. A lot of wheel spin. Obviously, could be well into a long run here on that set of medium tyres. And you'd expect I mean, this track is pretty savage on the rear tyres. It's very abrasive. And it's all about tyre management after about 5 or 6 laps that you get into a long run. So, yeah, you have to. It's one of the things you have to nurse while you're out there. But it didn't look like he had that traction you'd be looking for as he comes through turn 6 into 7. Looks like he slowed down a little bit there. This was the exit of 13, using all of the track and that exit curb as well. It's one of those corners in qualifying. Come next week, you've got to be careful of.
Yeah.
You can easily get pinged for track limits there. Verstappen into turn 10, such a difficult corner. If it starts to lock up, as we saw last year, it's like a never-ending process with these big 18-inch wheels now. There's a lot of inertia there. As soon as you lock up, it takes forever for it to unlock. And yeah, so that's something that hasn't been fully eradicated and probably never will be around that very technically challenging part of the track.
Love it. Jeff Bell tweets to say, Crofty, why is Checo Perez not on the time graphic on screen? We've only got 19 drivers on there.
Yes.
Because he's not on the FIA timing screens.
But
That's why.
aren't they the only team that are putting the same driver in for the entire day? That's why he doesn't need to be up there, because he's not going to get in the car until tomorrow. These drivers will all be in the car later on today who haven't yet set a time.
That's why you're paid the
That's
big
why I'm
bucks.
well.
Paying the big
I just wanted to ask you about Williams, because Alex has done the most laps. Alex Albon, he's sitting in P3. We did, as far as I'm aware, we haven't talked much about Williams yet this session.
Well, we haven't, to be fair.
New team principal.
We did
Well, we
speak about
talked-
James.
We spoke about James.
Yeah.
Talked a bit
But
about
the car's
the
got a yellow
TP.
flag there.
I wonder if we're doing a little
Oh, the last 10
flag
minutes.
test.
Oh, it's too early, isn't it? It's the last 10 minutes we were told, Ant and I were told yesterday. Maybe they've brought them out early to have a look.
The fact that
I
we're
thought it
not
was going to be
seeing
the
an
whole.
incident.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be the whole track, or maybe they're just doing one sector to start off with.
That it's testing, and therefore all the procedures need to be tested
This
as
is very
well
true.
to make sure that everything works perfectly and is safe for when we go racing next week.
And the reason why we're not going to see action all the way to the end, yeah, so now we're under virtual safety car. So
Right,
they are
yes, it
testing
is the
system.
test.
The reason they're doing this now as well, by the way, is so most of the drivers and teams will come in and start prepping their cars, use this opportunity to start prepping the cars for the next driver getting in after lunch.
Yeah.
It's quite a long process to change pedal boxes, the seat position, or the seat itself, actually take the driver's seat out, the new one in, and even steering columns can change, angle of steering column can change as well. So many things are factored into this in terms of a driver change, and it's going to take the mechanics quite some time to get it done. So they'll save a bit of time by using this period of virtual safety car system checks to start prepping the car for the next driver.
So Crofty isn't sure about the beautiful Williams racing livery. He thinks the horror show that is the McLaren livery is great. No, I don't particularly like the Williams team kit. It's the two-tone blue, what I was talking about. And I think the McLaren, you're just seeing it there, stands out. At first sight here, I'm thinking that the Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo could cause slight confusion this year from a distance. I'm thinking the Aston Martin and the Mercedes from a distance could also cause slight confusion. We are back in black, as it were, for our liveries in the main, with teams taking paint off to try and save a bit of weight.
The Ferrari and the Alfa Romeo, I think it might be a bit of a challenge.
You paying attention?
That's what he just said.
Oh, no, sorry. I've done it again.
Even I was
already.
listening at that point.
I was too busy looking at the McLaren.
Did you spot anything on the McLaren, or can we carry on?
No, just touring liveries, yeah. Talking liveries.
No, the blue uniform, Crofty. I had that very colour blue uniform at school. So it
Did
always
you?
jars slightly when I see that blue. It's like, oh, I could never wear it. I could never wear that colour again.
With
ever.
all due respect to our friends at Williams, someone tweets me to say, I'm with Crofty, they look like a lawn bowls team. I think that's a bit harsh.
That's harsh.
But they've sent me some photos of a lawn bowls team, and you're absolutely right.
Not that there's anything wrong at all with lawn bowls.
You ever tried lawn bowls? Very tricky.
My neighbours
haven't.
do lawn bowls. Play lawn bowls? Do you?
On their own lawn?
No. They're often, and they're F1 fans. But yes, regularly.
They should do it
partake
at
in
speed
lawn
then, shouldn't they? Virtual safety car test. Track gets
Come on then,
neutralised.
entertain us, Crofty.
What, for a virtual safety car test?
Yes.
That might even try my limits on that one. Yeah. I don't often find virtual safety car tests that enthralling, but I do find them very necessary, and they do need to be done and done properly. But you're right. Going back to the George Russell moment, the reason that George Russell could do that is, as long as you stay within a delta within a certain period, you can slow the momentum or increase the momentum of the car at a given stage. And you're taking a gamble as to when you think the virtual safety car is going to come to an end.
Yeah.
And it might cost you a little bit, but if you get it right, as George showed,
Yeah.
you can make up a place on the restart.
Which totally surprised Sergio Perez as well.
It certainly did. Felipe Drugovich, latest Brazilian driver in F1, reserve driver this year along with Stoffel van Dorn for the Aston Martin team. The reason, by the way, Stoffel's not here and driving the car with Lance Stroll injured is that he's in Cape Town for Formula E and had that commitment. If Lance Stroll can't make the first race, I wonder who would be in that car and what the decision-making process would be. Do you go for Felipe Drugovich, F2 champion, one for the future, who's been here in testing and has he got a bit fast there, Oscar?
Yeah, perhaps. Big old lock-up.
Yeah.
Coming up to the line there into the pit entry.
Yeah. Look like it.
Give away.
Yeah. Do you go for the one who's got experience in the current car, who's been at testing, or do you go for the one who's got experience in F1 and scored points on debut here in Bahrain when he
I
was driving
wouldn't want to
for
be the
McLaren?
person to tell Felipe it's not him if that was the case. Because if you've done the testing and you've been round.
But then again,
That's
Felipe's gone into the season not expecting to be driving in a race. I mean, look, this time last year, Sebastian Vettel missed the first two races. Maybe he should have expected it. Maybe it's becoming a pattern at Aston Martin.
I was trying to work out yesterday whether this is the third or fourth year where a driver's missed the first race. We've had a few.
Yeah, we have. I think it's a hard choice to make. And I would imagine that a few brains will get together at the team. And I'm not suggesting for a moment Lance Stroll isn't going to make the... Drugovich down the inside.
Yeah, the VSC is no more.
Yeah.
I think, look, if it was me, I would think I would stick with Drugovich for the weekend, having tested him here. He's, he's getting more and more familiar with this car. He is the F2 champion from last year, and Stoffel he's an all-rounder now, I'd say, with his World Endurance Championship commitments and the Formula E champion there as well. But they're such different cars. He spent most of his time in Formula E, has Stoffel recently. I think there's such different cars now that I think you'd have slightly more confidence, I believe, by running the same drive you've just been running at the test here.
Yeah.
Same car, same track. He's getting in more and more into the groove, and a proven quantity. He is a champion.
Yeah.
in the closest category to Formula One that we have in Europe. And yeah, you have to, at some point, you have to try somebody new as well. And I'm intrigued to see how he'll do.
Goes 7th fastest, 1.6 seconds off the pace. With that lap straight after the end of the virtual safety car. I think I'd err with you on that one, Ant.
It's not an easy decision.
No, it's not, because Stoffel gives you experience and a bit of stability.
Very good technically.
And he stepped in here in the past from McLaren that year and did really well that weekend.
Well, yeah, he scored points in his debut.
Yeah.
Here for McLaren. They both bring different things to the party, but I think, what they say about the lottery, you got to be in it to win it, and Felipe has got the experience in this car. Now, the one thing that the team will have, of course, is some very, very good data on how Felipe has performed, given the fuel load or run plan that he was on at that time. They'll be able to properly, accurately assess his talents.
So if they do put Stoffel in the car, it's because it didn't really go Drogovic's way during this test, and he was miles off where they would have hoped for him to be.
Good point. Let's go down to the pit lane. We're talking Aston Martin, we're talking Felipe Drugovich, who is was newly added last autumn to their driver squad, which consists of Stoffel van Dorn, Felipe Drugovich, Jessica Hawkins, and also Pedro de la Rosa, who's with Ted right now.
Thank you very much, Crofty. Yes, Pedro, welcome back. Nice to see you again. You've been around, but back with a team. And I know you've driven for a lot of teams in Formula One. I've covered you in most of them, but you haven't driven for the Silverstone-based team. So, what kind of team did you find when you came to what's now Aston Martin?
Well, to be fair, I mean, my first ever team when I drove as a reserve driver was Jordan Grand Prix. So. It was Team Silverstone, you know?
It was. It's a long time since Jordan, but yeah, you make a good point.
98. So I mean, the great thing about joining Aston Martin was the fact that I met, you know, a lot of people that used to work with me back in the test team in 98. Yeah. So it's a fantastic atmosphere we are experiencing at the moment. We are, I mean, the team has worked so hard to get this car here ready, and the new energy that we can all feel in the team, and it's great. It's great because the feeling that we are unstoppable in a way, you know, that we can really do something important if we keep pushing hard and with this level of talent all around us.
And what's the immediate feeling about the car now that you've run it? A launch is a launch. There's always positive feelings. But I know it's only the first half of day one. But do you think you've got something that you can really do some business with?
Well, I mean, the reality is that we've just accumulating aero data this morning. We have absolutely done nothing else but just trying to do a lot of aero testing, constant speed, just to get the maximum data and correlate a bit the data that we find at the track with the wind tunnel. That's the main objective of the morning. So we haven't developed from that there, you know. So let's wait to see the afternoon. Let's wait to see tomorrow. It's the first point or the first chapter in this new book is actually to understand what we have in our hands, you know, and that's what testing is all about.
Felipe's doing well, isn't he? Just parachuted in.
Felipe is great, you know. I mean, I looked at how mature he is. The team told him, stay away from curbs. We wanted to accumulate aero data, and I know how difficult it is for a race driver to go into a test, such an important test day, in Formula One, and respect all the track limits, try not to push too much, and he's been doing that perfectly well, super disciplined, calm, mature. He's a great driver.
Okay, you could say calm and mature were good words to describe Fernando Alonso as well. How's he feeling, though? He must not be calm about his prospects of getting into a really fast car. He must be excited about the season.
I think we are all very excited about this new season. Fernando is obviously eager to get into the car. You know, with such a limited testing, with only 3 days of testing one car, it is very difficult for any race driver to hold back. You know, you're just preparing yourself continuously, physically, karting, doing whatever, you know, even with with all Formula One cars. We've seen other drivers just getting prepared for this test, and it's something that you just want to jump into the car, especially when you have a new team to adapt to. You want to do as many kilometers, not only to know about the new car you have, but also to the new team you are going to work for, and especially with your race crew, and that's why Fernando is warming up in the behind the scenes.
Okay, Pedro, muchas gracias. Thank you very much. Off you go to your engineers things and duties that he has to do. And Crofty, as we rocket towards the lunch break, there you can see at the back of the garage, Felipe Drugovich has now actually got out of the car. His work is done for the morning. He's into the debrief. There you can see at the back of the engineers panel, the central section in the garage. He's put the headphones on, and well, he doesn't look. He looks like he's enjoyed it, actually. He doesn't look like he's out of breath or anything. He looks fit as a fiddle, and he's done 40 laps, and I'd say Crofty has acquitted himself rather brilliantly this morning. What do you think?
Stuck to the plan and has done what the team has told him to do. And that's all they can ask of Felipe Drugovich or whoever's in the car at the time. And it's interesting to hear from Pedro de la Rosa what the plan was for the Aston Martin team on this first morning of testing. We're correlating what we think is going to happen with the car and what the wind tunnel tells us is going to happen to what is actually happening out on the track, which is why we do say watch the times and treat them with a bit of caution, because teams could be doing all manner of things, and it's not sandbagging, it's just running through the processes. And I think only when we get to the final day we're going to get a real true shape of what's to come for this season.
It's funny how we talk about a new driver and what they're told to do, in inverted commas, and what they can do for the team, as opposed to a more experienced driver, say like George Russell that we're on board with now, or Lewis Hamilton or Max Verstappen, who we naturally assume guides the team and tell the team what they should be doing. It's an interesting development in terms of a driver's career path, how you arrive as the new upstart, and you're very much kind of told what to do and you're learning the ropes. And at some time in your career, that changes, and you start being listened to and expected to help whip the team into shape and guide them as to where to tune the car, which part of the corner that you're not happy where the car performs, and what you need to do going into next year. It's an interesting development that a driver goes through, and how they turn the likes of yourself, Crofty, as a commentator, how you look at them, how you perceive them as a young driver with zero experience, and they're just there to serve the team. And then you change your own opinion and how you look at drivers.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, serve the team. It's a
do you start as an employee and then slowly become an expert?
No, I've always thought of Formula One as a team sport. So each member of the team has their own place and their own roles and responsibilities.
It's a really interesting one.
But with experience, your contribution to that team can grow out wider.
In my eyes, I feel like that's where a driver comes in and says, I feel like it's doing this there, and then as he goes through his career, he says, it did that, can we try this? Is it as simple as that?
Well, I mean, Drugovich might be he might already be giving amazing feedback and feeling things, guiding the team.
But it's also having the confidence to suggest that, because you probably don't have
are you listened to?
Even if you...
Are you necessarily listened to as much as, say, George Russell would be?
Il a ferme doigt
It's very hard for the team to judge. That's what I'm getting
not
at.
To judge,
Yeah.
not to listen at the start and to actually,
It's fun. It's a really interesting one. It is human nature.
What were you like? How long did it take you to...
I have to put my thinking cap on with that one, because I was a test driver for 6 years before stepping into a racing environment at Formula One. I learnt so much in those years.
I was going to say, did you not then, you surely when you arrived must have had more respect from people because you'd already been a test driver, so they know you knew how to give the feedback they needed.
I definitely felt things change within that team in Brackley over the years that I was there. And I'll never forget, after the first couple of laps, I drove the 2004 car. I came in and I said to the team, already I could feel it was such a step from the year before. We were there testing in Barcelona. I came in, I said, we've got a good car here, guys. That was the first comment I said about the car at the beginning of 2004. I was the first driver to drive it in the team. And by that point, I already knew what a bad car felt like.
Yeah.
And this was the first experience of, wow, this is a different kettle of fish here.
I remember talking to you that day.
Do you?
Yeah.
I don't remember talking to you.
Yeah, you were talking to everyone. This is a good car. This is brilliant. I love this car. I'll remind you of it in a little while.
Let's hope that Drogovic is saying the same thing today at Aston Martin.
You never know. I might just pop down there a little later on and find out. And that is it for the first session of this 3-day test. So what have we got? 3 days. So we've done 8. So we're about trying to work out here.
A sixth of the way through, probably.
1/6 of the way through. Trying to work it out.
Sessions.
We're a sixth of the way through pre-season training. A sixth, Anthony, of the way through pre-season training. Thanks, Rach.
That's all right. I'm here for the maths and the French, not the French, according to Twitter.
I thought you didn't like your blue uniform. It sounds like you should have fond memories of it, all that
Not at all.
schooling knowledge you came away with.
Red Bull, the defending Constructors champions, occupying the top garage in the pit lane. Defended driver champion Max Verstappen on duty this morning, 71 laps, and the fastest time from Carlos Sainz, who had the quickest time for a long period. The most laps completed, 74 laps by Alex Albon in the Williams. Reliable.
Impressive.
And a decent lap as well. The least amount of laps completed was Felipe Drugovich in the Aston Martin. They stopped on the track, the only red flag we've had, actually. Great reliability all round. About 6 minutes into the session, I'm led to believe it was a sensor issue coupled with the ECU. So that curtailed them for a while. But Drugovich, in his first experience in an F1 car, will be very pleased, I'm sure, with the way the morning has gone. So these then are the times for the first session of pre-season testing, the morning session. Max Verstappen, nearly 3/10 up on Carlos Sainz. Alex Albon, 7/10 back and ahead of Zhou Guanyu in the Alfa Romeo. George Russell on driving duties for Mercedes, 1.2 seconds behind, was 5th fastest. Nico Hülkenberg returning ahead of Felipe Drugovich. Tsunoda, Gasly and Piastri completing the 10 drivers on the track. So for 2023 pre-season testing, as Rachel said, we are a 1/6 of the way through. We'll be back on track 3:15 local time and through under the lights until 7:30 this evening, and then back again for Friday and for Saturday. It's fast and furious. It is a short, sharp shock as it comes to the drivers and the teams for this season. And we are a 6 down. Max Verstappen, defending his title, has hit the track with the quickest time. So we get an hour for lunch now. I'm probably going to go and watch coverage of the 1972 Hereford-Newcastle Cup match in memory of John Motson, who's passed away today. Motty, we miss you. Rest in peace. Without the likes of Motty, we couldn't do what we do from the commentary box today. One of the greats of sports commentary, and sadly passing away today. Whatever you do in your lunch break, enjoy, and we'll see you in a few moments' time, or in about an hour's time, for more coverage on this first day of pre-season testing.